Now according to Stockfish, I got it all wrong. After slightly advantage, I had nothing but my dear Capablanca. You tell me we learn more from our defeats. Who needs victories, right?
Well, hello and welcome to the penultimate 10th round of the Australian Chess Championship for 2026. And our standings have clarified so much that there are only four theoretical winners of the tournament, and realistically, just two people can win the event. One is the leader, Yi Liu, who has 8 out of 9. He lost an early game to Trevor Tao. He has won every single game since then. And the big surprise packet, Melbourne's Tedrick Lee, 15 years old, not ranked as one of the very best juniors in the country, and yet he did just win the Oceania Under-18 Championship, and that was just a few weeks ago, so he's obviously in form. And he has had a wonderful tournament. He crushed rival high-rated junior Harvey Zhu yesterday. He's also beaten Grandmaster Darryl Johansson in this tournament. So both of them are dropping a long way down to find an opponent. They've played all their main rivals. So Yi Liu gets a potentially tricky one against 11-year-old Ranch Chakrabarti. Thank you. And Chakrabarti with white is certainly more dangerous. Experience should be worth something. Yi Liu's 28 years old. He's in the form of his life. And not so long ago, in October, he went over to Europe to compete in an international gamers festival. He's particularly strong at one particular video game, and he decided to play a tournament alongside the Münsterland Open, and lo and behold, he won it. So that victory in Germany. Then he played extremely well in the Christmas special just before this event started in December in Queensland, in Redcliffe. He beat George C. in that event, ultimately lost to a player who isn't here, Brodie McClymont, who is also a Queenslander and a very successful player in Queensland. Okay, so Chakrabarti, it's going to be a good game, I think. Chakrabarti against Liu. On board 2, Tedrick Lee has someone he's had to test himself against regularly in Melbourne. Ryder Testerland is 5 years older than him, and generally has usually juniors who play older juniors get an inferiority complex when they're very young. And even if Tedrick is now a better player, he might be thinking Testerland was still really good. But okay, these two played most recently in Ballarat in the Begonia Open. Lee had black though, and he drew, so that's a good sign for him for today. But if Yi scores even half a point more than Tedrick, he will be Australian champion with 1 round to spare. Of course, if there's a tie, we have a classical playoff usually played significantly after, maybe 6 months after the championship, with good prize money and often at a very public venue. On board 3, Sukai, our fourth seed, finally getting up on the top of the list. The former Singaporean is up against Trevor Tao. Trevor Tao just has dropped too many draws this tournament. That's been his problem. He's the only player to beat Zhang Yi, but he just can't seem to defeat the juniors. And he actually said yesterday maybe at 48 his time at the top of Australian chess might be coming to an end. Though he's certainly younger than Johansson and Solomon and Gary Lane and various other veterans from the 1980s. So Trevor Tao, well, it won't be easy for him. Sukai is a very classical style player and just plays quiet openings. Trevor could find himself in an uncomfortable position. But I think given how far ahead the top two are, maybe there's less pressure on Trevor to play for a win. And third place is about all that they can realistically hope for, barring some accident with the top two. And also, Li Kien has moved up to 6 with his win over Johansson yesterday. Very double-edged game. Could easily have gone the other way. And so he's got Sterling Backer, who did reasonably well yesterday, bar some irrational play. He drew with Trevor Tao. So the Sydney player is, he's 5 years older than Li Kien, who's 18 still, and has been playing in Melbourne. These two, I don't think they've ever played before, no. Whereas Trevor Tao did beat Sukai with Black also 2 years ago in the last Australian Championships, which were held in Adelaide. Reminder that this is a biennial event. It has been since more or less since it started. I think the only time there were yearly events was in the very late 60s when Walter Brown temporarily came to Australia as a refugee from the draft in America. And because he was born here, he had a passport and could escape. At the same time, the Australian co-champion got drafted here and escaped to America. But Walter Brown played in the 1969 Australian Championship, even though there was a 1971. And I think they put it on especially for him. And he scored a massive 13.5 out of 15. He became a grandmaster soon afterwards. Then, as soon as the Vietnam War finished, he went back to America saying he never wanted to see Australia ever again. So I don't think he enjoyed it here. He was very much a party animal, although you wouldn't realise that from reading his biography, which was a very sanitised version. It's called The Stress of Chess, and nearly every sentence about his time in Australia is factually incorrect. Claims he won lots of medals and scored more than he did and so on, but also and played symbols in places that don't actually exist. But I think he was just relying on memory, and of course it's fallible, and there wasn't a fact checker. But also he was famous during the Australian Open of 1971 of finishing his game, then challenging people to blitz, sometimes 5 minutes against 1 minute. He'd have the 1 minute for stakes, and he would generally win that. And then at the end of the game, he'd then go to a nightclub and finally turn up for the game the next day with practically no sleep and win anyway. So he was a class above the field, but it was unbelievable how he could manage to do that. He was in his early 20s, so I guess those sort of things are possible for a while, but he was famous for it. Okay, and he also played 2 Olympiads for Australia. He won 1 bronze medal, I think, which is really difficult to do if you're in the Australian team. And he, at least in the second Olympiad, the team would not eat anywhere near him at dinner time. So the relations between him and the team had deteriorated quite dramatically by 1972. So, okay. So where were we up to? Li Kien, a good win against the Grandmaster yesterday. up against Sterling Backer. Then we have Harvey Zhu coming off a big loss to Tedrick Lee. That was probably the critical game of the tournament for Zhu. If he'd beaten his fellow junior, he would have been running equal second. Now he's in the running for nothing. He's up against Melbourne IM David Cannon, also coming off a loss, although that was against Yi Liu, sort of more understandable, a very informed player. But those two, I don't know if they both think their tournament's finished or whether they still have ambition. Certainly Zhu at 13 years old is a bit more, how would you say, likely to be less tired than David Cannon. Cannon is actually the 8th seed, which is, of course, not bad at all. And he's only 24, so maybe he'll be doing okay. Then for the first time in the tournament, apart from the very first round, where Zhang Jilin, I think, was playing Trevor Tao on board 1, Zhang Jilin, the woman grandmaster, has worked her way up to a top board on board 6, and she's copped 3rd seed George C, who is maybe not in his best form, but certainly still playing really hard. Jilin has not had a great tournament at all, but she's got herself together a bit. She's on the same score, for example, as Dara Johansson, who is playing a Melbourne junior, Leo Kalina. They played once before in Ballarat last year, and Kalina saved a really bad position. So Johansson, will feel like this is a junior that he hasn't got on top of, which he won't be happy with. Johansson, of course, is also from Melbourne. Then we've got Sydney chess teacher Aidan Odenthal. Well, not so much chess teacher. That's peripheral. Up against Jesse Zafarakis. Zafarakis is coming off a not very good Oceania junior tournament, but he has played quite well here, and he's been on the top boards fairly frequently, unlike Odenthal. So you'd think the Melbourne junior, or not quite junior anymore, I think he's 21, would do well. But look, with 2 rounds to go, one of the things about long tournaments is that people start to blunder more. They're tired, they haven't got the concentration, especially tomorrow morning with a 9:30 start. You're likely to see either some very stupid moves or some very short draws for people who don't want to blunder, especially those who no longer have a big chance in the tournament. Further down, Heather Richards coming off her second loss against Sydney junior Ethan Chang. As we remember, Heather Richards missed her first 2 games due to illness and has really struggled physically to play this tournament, being in her 4th year of long COVID. But at least she's playing chess and she's playing okay. We'll see how she goes in the last 2 rounds. John Papantonio, one of the positive surprises of this tournament. Actually, we should have known he was taking it seriously when he went off to the Hong Kong Open just before this event. It was a nothing special result, but it certainly got him into the swing of playing against strong players. And he's playing Terence Tang, who is just 21, University of New South Wales student, but on a decent score. Then, Bias Garland, Kishik Bhatta. First half of the tournament was great. She's now drifted right down the other end. There's no other player, I think, that's had such a fall from grace, except also Gary Lane is surprisingly getting the bye this round because Barman Kargosha has dropped out against the advice of the main arbiter. But it used to be dropping out of the Australian Championship would incur a penalty of between 6 months and 12 months of a ban, rather, depending on whether you had an excuse or not. Here I don't know. I heard he had a medical certificate, so I'll stay judgment on that until I find out more. And of course, Stephen Solomon is not in the tournament He was forced to go back to Melbourne a few days ago due to a family emergency. So he unfortunately had to drop out. So let's have a look at the games. And we have excitement on board one. Very much so. So a French defence, Yi relies on that totally. A3, but here I suspect he thinks that Chakrabarti has prepared for the main line. Bishop takes C3, so he plays the old-fashioned line B4. So, and he's got it with a twist. B4 is the recommended move, and here really you should take on D4, but Yi plays the extremely risky pawn takes pawn here. And the reason it's risky is because of knight here. So if pawn takes pawn check, you play C3, you take on A3 with the bishop, and then you dump the knight on D6, and black's king is doomed. So this is supposed to be fantastic compensation. Let's see what the computer says. Fantastic compensation for the pawn. Or two at the moment, but you'll get one back. Instead, though, Yi has a surprise up his sleeve. B3 check. So he is giving back the sacrificed pawn immediately. C3, knight here. Still doesn't check on D6, queen takes, knight E7, and before the king can castle, knight check. So black's idea here, well, his first threat is to take on D4 with the knight. So you've got to do something about that. Knight takes D4 would win for black. So he covers that D4 pawn, and then F6 played. That not only threatens to break up the support of the knight, but also stops knight G5, though I don't think it was a threat yet, but knight G5 can be very embarrassing to that pawn on F7. So here, well, let's see. What did he do after bishop A5? He played fast. It was here that he started thinking. Yep, 13 minutes on C3, another 6 on this move. That was quick, F6, and another 11 minutes on bishop D3. This is an enormously complex position. You know, you would expect black's king to be in trouble, but if white's center falls apart first, the king might find a safe haven on G8, and in the meantime, black could finish a pawn up in the center. So it's not easy at all, and he decides to play bishop D3. So his plan is to get out of the middle as fast as possible. Maybe you can play rook E1 sometime. So, okay, let's say pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn. Knight takes, queen takes. Bishop F4. Queen C5, getting out of the way. Really hard position to assess. I think white needs to give up another pawn by just castling. Let's say we take that. And who knows, maybe queen D1 coming out to H5 or F3 or some square like that. I could imagine this is good for white. And the computer says very good. That just means knight E5 may not be good. So do they really like this position for white? No, they don't. Queen B6. Really? Looks fantastic, actually. So what happens after queen B6 if we just retreat? Queen D4. I was wondering about that. And we don't have time for bishop D2 because the knight's hanging. So you get to take that pawn on C3. So we have to swap queens. That is very sad. Our bishop takes pawn check first, of course. Now we've got to choose between king E2. They want to play bishop D2. Okay. Take, take. pawn takes and rook b1. They say rook c1. Yeah, well, they say this is slightly better for black, but I don't think there's any advantage whatsoever. Your king's bad, your pieces haven't developed. I'm almost sure we're going to get a pawn back pretty quickly. Now, we are 2 pawns down, but that's a lot of development. So if the computer says minus 0.2 when you're actually 2 pawns up, they believe white has a lot of initiative, and as a huge... What's that, sorry? The bishop, yeah, you're right. The bishop, well, the rook in the corner isn't great. Yeah, there's a lot of problems. Now, maybe knight g6. Oh, no, you can't even get back a pawn that way. So a human would actually prefer white because the moves are easy. Rook c7, f4. Just keep control of the position. Rook c7 means you can't go g6 and king g7. So they're actually suggesting g5 here in order to stop f4 and run away with the king, but we could just put a rook on the 7th, although they suggest a4 and bishop b5, and maybe the bishop never gets out. That's also possible. So yeah, it's a little bit baffling that they go slight advantage black, but in practice, real advantage white. So bishop d3 was played, takes. Oh no, back to live move, sorry. So still no move. So he's looking at lines like this. He could also look at queen b6 straight away, I guess. That could be better, because we do have this knight takes d4 idea coming up. And if knight takes, queen takes. So how are we supposed to cope with that? They say this time it's good for white. Why? Rook b1. And the reason is because white's only 1 pawn down here. So they're going to get the b6 pawn back and have a good position without even giving up a pawn. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you can't easily play g5 because we take on f6. Might not be much, but yeah, it's something Yi probably doesn't want to play. So he did take here. Oh no, back to live moves. He still hasn't moved. Ryan spent ages on, yeah, bishop d3. And now his opponent's spending ages. His opponent was still more time than when he started, and suddenly he's used up 20 minutes already, and I suspect he'll keep thinking. So the 11-year-old Chakrabarti, who is the 7th seed, and as I pointed out earlier, if the ratings had been the August 2025 rating, FIDE ratings, Chakrabarti would have been top seed, because he actually got his rating up to 2350 before he had a couple of not so great results. So Chakrabarti, well, we all know he's a great talent, but this is board 1 in the Australian Championship in the second last round against someone who's winning everything. So we'll see how well he goes. You shouldn't be nervous, because really it's going to be hard not to win this championship. Okay, Ryder Testerlin is playing. Okay, this system of the Queen's Gambit, I think I know something about. It's called the ROGERS system, and it was actually popular early on in Bobby Fischer's career. It was found that he didn't handle the white side very well. Sorry, the black side very well. Yeah, so there are lots of decent moves here for white. Queen a4 check is okay. Knight c6 doesn't lose a piece or anything, but e3 is the most flexible. Knight d7. So black wants to play c5, and it's here that this system is a lot better if the white knight is on f3, but Testerlin knows what he's doing. He probably should swap on d5 immediately, but okay, c5, take, knight e2. And all the pressure that you can get with queen a5 and that sort of thing just doesn't really do anything around here. So Testelin plays c4. It was quite funny. Yesterday, I was able to show a game I'd played in one of the key lines here. I think it's almost identical to a shellacking I got from Victor Korchnoi. So let's have a look. It was probably this game, if it goes there. Yep, same position. I threw h6 in, c4, bishop c2. Now I didn't put my queen on a5 around here because I feel like it doesn't do anything. So castles, and came back here. Look, it's playable, but if white gets f3 and e4, your c4 pawn can become quite weak, or at least I thought that's what was coming. But instead he went b3, rook e8, and a4. That stops me supporting that c4 pawn. Now, if he swaps on c4, then his central pawns can start rolling. I'm trying to roll my queenside ones. It's not so easy. He wants an endgame. I don't. And we get some super complicated position where my c-pawn's good, but it turns out that he just gives up a piece and everything works out really well. And after that, I realized that this position was almost unplayable. And if you have a look at, okay, in the game we've got it without h6 thrown in, but yeah, only bishop e7 has a reasonable score. And yeah, it's really quite good for white. If we do it without h6 thrown in and just have c5 immediately, which is what Testelin did, we should have similar scores. Yeah, they're massive scores for white. Remembering white should score about 54, 55% from a normal opening. And yeah, this is not great at all. So so you wouldn't want to play this with black, but Ryder Testelin has decided he does want to. And well, so c4 played, bishop c2, queen a5, as I say, does nothing. Maybe it stops b3 briefly, castles, but f3 and e4 is going to be pretty good. Rook e8. And now queen d2 looks super suspicious here. I guess black has an idea of playing h6. I was thinking about queen e1 to come out to h4 and lead the attack, but I think h6 could be annoying because right now my pawn is not protected. So what happens if e4? You can't do it at the moment because your bishop on g5 will be hanging. So what about bishop takes, knight takes, e4? How does that look? So the idea is to play e5, f4, f5, and absolutely steamroll here. So why isn't this just good for white? Take, queen g5 and jump in on the dark squares. Okay, there's a bit of counterplay. Sort of explains queen d2. That means after h6, I can drop back to h4, and I don't have to worry about my e3 pawn. And of course, the black queen is not well placed to build up pressure. Of course, walking into a pin looks a bit weird, but you can always play a3 if you really want to. But the big move coming is e4 because now your bishop on g5 is protected. So how does black try to swap that? Well, you can't move your knight from d7 without allowing bishop f6. Knight h5 looks untrustworthy. h6, g5 looks untrustworthy. So I would judge this to be an almost optimum variation of the Rogers from white's point of view. You don't have your knight on f3, which a lot of people you see delay is. So in this sort of position, after knight f3, it's absolutely fine to go bishop here, knight d7, e3, c5. Because queen a5 and knight e4 is coming, And well, it's a really complicated line. There were a lot of Armenian players who made this popular about 20 years ago, and it was used. Well, it was used by Anand. But it was also used by Levon Aronian, the top Armenian player, until he was bought by the United States, and now plays for the US. Well, okay. When I say bought, I was at the closing press conference of the Sinquefield Cup, I think in 2015, and Rex Sinquefield, who is a American billionaire, big Trump supporter, big Trump funder, in fact, and big chess supporter as well, and big chess funder. He, at the closing ceremony, took over the mic and he said, this is directed to everyone except Hikaru Nakamura. And the players were Caruana and Vachier Legrave and Wesley So, the elite of the chess world. When are you going to come and live in St. Louis and start playing for the United States? And little by little, it's happened. So Caruana was first. Italy tried to match the offer made by Sinquefield, but they couldn't really go close, even though they'd funded Caruana to getting to Super Grandmaster level, because he left America pre-teen, about the age of 12 or 13 or something. Anyway, he was the first. Nakamura moved, I think, from where he lived to live in St. Louis for a while. Then Wesley So wanted to leave anyway because he was having real problems, not just with the Philippine Chess Federation. There weren't serious problems, but also he had a new adopted family in the States, and he wanted to live in the States. He still does. So he moved without I think any funding at all from Sinquefield. But then the top two Cubans have moved, Dominguez and Bruzon. Vachier Legrave said no. And who else have they got now? Aronian, of course. Yeah. So, I don't know. I only know the early details of the early deals, but they've got accommodation near the chess center in St. Louis, and they're very comfortable. They're not required to skip any tournaments, or they're not really tied to St. Louis, but maybe they have to play the Sinquefield Cup or something. That would be an eminently reasonable condition. Maybe they have to play the US Championship, which is also played at St. Louis. But they're basically just transferring federation. Of course, Aronian did that after his wife, the Australian Ariane Kaoli, died. That was one of the very first COVID victims, early 2020. That was really tragic. Aronian, I think, also the president of Armenia, who he was quite close to, also got deposed. So he didn't have any real political influence. I understand there was some pressure being applied by the sort of Armenian mafia, if you like, against the nightclub that Aronian and Kaoli ran over the alcohol imports, something along those lines. So all in all, it was not so surprising that Aronian decided to start a new life in America and try to forget about the tragedy of Ariane. So anyway, so that's the story of how America became super strong. And Aronian was one of the very keen players of this line, but he would not play it, I think, if the knight could go to e2. And Testelin is now thinking, Tedrickley, I don't know if he's led a charmed life or whether his opening preparation is really unbelievably good, but in this tournament, he has really done badly out of the opening. Yesterday, it was no big advantage, but it was also a more comfortable position to play against Harvey Zhu. And a lot of the time, he's come out of the opening without any problems at all. So, it's really impressive. Okay, board 3. Trevor Tao and Sukai G. And that looks a bit on the random side, but let's have a look. So it's a slow start. English opening against a Slav. Okay, B3, yeah, I might have played Queen C2, but okay. Double fianchetto by white, he did anyway. And yeah, he's white doesn't really want to swap on B5 and give black a bit of space. A5, okay, this is quite aggro play by Trevor Tao. Normally you'd get a few of your queenside pieces out, because if it does blow open, you could find the long diagonal being a bit of a problem. So takes now. I don't really see why he needs to do it. I think black is planning to play knight A6. Or even bishop A6 is possible. So why does he take now? A4. My first thought would be to play B4 here. And because after knight D2 by white, you don't have the C4 square at the moment. But maybe you will get that square eventually. Instead, he took, and just played knight here. So both knights can get to B5 and B4. And Trevor Tao has equalized already. Oh, you really want to do that? I guess if he goes knight C2, there's this technical detail of knight E4 coming in. Which could be embarrassing. I don't know, can we go Queen C1? Not really. Then Rook C8 or Knight C3 or something. So yeah, that okay, then you can't really go Knight C2, and he's just put the knight on A3, so he doesn't want to go Knight B1 either. So Knight B5, take Queen here. Is he losing that pawn is the question. It's easy to imagine that pawn is in trouble. E6, why doesn't he go E5? Because then Knight C6 and the E5 pawn is quite weak. So pawn up, castles, Knight D7, threatening the knight on D4. All of a sudden, Knight C6. Okay, the trick is like this. If knight takes knight, he's going to take here. No, there's no trick. I wanted to play Queen C3, but I thought that might be annoying. And now I can just take on B5 if I want, or I can play Rook C8 and get a really nice ending. That could easily be much, much better for black. Knight B6 or something. Although then Rook C1. But even after Rook C1, I can swap and play A4. And the bishop on G2 is almost irrelevant in this ending. It's almost as if black is a piece up. And yeah, you haven't got time for Rook C6 and Rook takes knight, so you have to put your rook in front of the pawn, and probably you die. Not sure how the knight manages to get round into the game either, but it feels very, very good for black. Yeah, it is very, very good for black. So after knight C6, Trevor just took on B5, which looks like it's going to be a safe extra pawn. Let's have a look. Yeah, there's no easy move here. Knight takes B4, doesn't look so great. Yeah, black is already better. So they say you can just stay a pawn down. Bishop takes bishop, queen B2 check, knight E5. They reckon it's okay, but no, I'd rather be black for sure. The main trick though, okay, takes. What you would like to do here is play king G8, but then knight E7 is mate. So you actually have to block here. And the reason they think there's compensation here is because you've got to be very careful about things like knight g4 or g4, g5, or even knight d7 in some positions. So they think you don't have time to queen your a pawn because you've got to worry about your king. And they're saying queen e8, which I wouldn't even think of. King g8, I certainly would. And after king g8, yeah, black is a bit better, but they think it's okay. So it's up to Sukai G to find something good, remembering that normally Trevor Tow's about half an hour ahead of his opponent. Sukai G's kept up with his pace, but once he had to play knight b5, he was left with a very weak pawn. And Tao can theoretically still win the tournament if he wins his next two and Yi loses his next two. Well, Yi losing his next two is much more likely if he loses the first one. He'll get more nervous and so on, and maybe be playing Daryl Johansson. But yeah, at the moment, how is this French defense going? He's played the queen d6 move. So take, knight takes. Oh, yeah, queen d6, bishop f4, queen b6. And that is the line we saw the computer prefer. And after queen takes queen, it's, well, okay for black, according to the computer, but I would think very difficult to play. Maybe he's got some idea of giving back material, but we'll see. Okay, the other player who still has a theoretical chance of winning the tournament is Li Trikien, and he is up against Sterling Baaka. And the whole tournament, Trikien has been playing the Exchange Queen's Gambit. And this system by Baaka is relatively modern, putting your bishop on e6 and then only then playing knight d7. Traditionally, that bishop is really badly placed on e6, but modern players, they throw in h6 usually as well. So you could have thrown in h6 here. Okay, he wants to do it now that white has shown his hand as to whether he puts the knight on f3 or e2, because after bishop h4, yeah, knight f4 will allow a g5 idea, but he goes g5 straight off. Okay, it's clearly preparation by the former Australian junior champion because he's got more time left than when he started. h4 played. Okay, so, and also Kien looks like he's on his own. Takes, queen f6. But that's his first move where he spends a lot of time. What else could he do? He could take on h4, I guess. I don't know if he could hang on to that pawn. So this looks like it's happened before, the way Baak is playing. So let's have a quick check. Oh, that's not the way to do it. Let's go here. So, oh, that's interesting. I don't seem to have the up. Oh no, hang on. Yeah, okay, a few moves happened. Okay, so first of all, we go here to see what other games have been played in this position. And there are quite a few games. Oh, and GH4 is much more common than Queen F6. Okay, and let's see if any good players have been playing black. And Draken, and he lost. And all the lower rated players seem to win. That's unusual, but okay. So did Andraken play Queen F6 is the next question? No. So, okay, this line, he just hangs on to his pawn, Queen G5, and he went on to win European Cup not so long ago. What year was it? 2022. Okay, so Queen F6 is unusual, but has been played before. Close that, come on. So instead, after queen f6, queen f3 played. Take, rook g8. So black has a pair of bishops, white will have an h-file, and that pawn on g5 is quite important to stop white getting chunky pawns with f4, because if you go e4 here with white, usually it does nothing. Black will go something like bishop d6 and bishop f4. By playing e4, you weaken those dark squares quite considerably. Even after e4, we could go bishop g7 if we wanted, and that would also probably be quite good. So, it's definitely not very scary for black. I would say the computer will say black is slightly better. Nope, they say white is slightly better. Bishop h7? Oh, come on. That's not going to happen. So takes castles queenside is quite reasonable. Yeah, okay, so roughly equal. Let's go. Let's see if Ranch has moved after that. He has not, and he's burning time. So he played that with an hour, and his opponent played queen b6 instantly. So black, as we saw before, will go 2 pawns up in the main line. Take, bishop takes, bishop here, take, let's say rook c1. But black is way behind in development, and this could be quite difficult. And even something like knight c6. Knight c6 might be the most practical move, you know. Give up those 2 pawns. If you check on the 7th, we'll go to f6. And rook at b6 is also the only move that stops bishop a6, swapping off that. And let's play that. Bishop d7 feels like it's going to be a draw. Will the computer say zeros? Pretty well. It'll get to zeros sooner or later. So, nothing much happening. So queen b6 is a good move, but it's not enough to give winning chances for black. And that line with knight c6 is actually just groveling for a draw, rather than allow white to play rook c7 and a4, maybe bishop b5. Black could find themselves with no moves at all pretty soon if you're not careful. If once the rook's on c7, you won't have g6 and king g7 to get out. You might have king e8, king d8, but then you've got to be careful about knight f7 all the time. So the whole thing feels really difficult for black, but 2 pawns up is very, very good insurance. So you shouldn't be in too much trouble. Tedrick Lee was doing very well against Ryder Testelen, remembering Tedrick Lee is a point clear in 2nd place, but a point behind the leader. Queen b6 is a nothing move, so rook d1. So you can't even move your bishop on b4 and threaten queen takes pawn, because there's always bishop h7 check. So even going for grabbing that pawn doesn't look so great. And unfortunately, it's really hard to develop here because the d5 pawn is so weak. At the moment, there might even be a knight takes d5 coming up if black stops protecting the bishop on b4. So really, really tough position. The computer may not value it that highly, but I would say Tedrick Lee is on the road to victory already. Computer says point 1. Queen e6. Bishop f2, indeed. b5. Yeah, okay, that's sort of desperation, trying to start a queenside attack before white gets e4 in. But I think white can just, in that line, white will just go e4, and it should work really, really well. But we'll see. Okay, so the next game to look at is Harvey Zhu up against David Cannon. And at first sight, it looks like some sort of Benoni opening gone wrong for black. though neither player has got f4 or f5 in yet. So let's see. Bishop g5 seems weird. Why can't black just go f6 and then f5? Let's have a look. How did we get it? It was a Sicilian. Wow. Okay, this is the King's Indian attack, which Fischer used with some success in the early 70s. His game against Miag Masurin sort of made everyone want to play it. But this Queen E2 is more a Romanician style version of it. Although Romanician used to play it with D3. After Queen E2, the idea is you don't need to put your knight on D2, and you can often play C4 as well, and attack on the king side just the same. But here, Cannon changes the position entirely with E5, which really invites C3 and D4, and he's going there. So, okay, C3, Rook D1, D4 played. Queen E7 was trying to prevent D4, I guess. But if you grab the E pawn, you're liable to get into all sorts of bother on the E file, and also with that bishop sitting on G2. So D6 played should be a lot better for white, but there's a couple of downsides here. One is the rook is on the wrong square on D1. It wants to be on F1 so that F4 can be played. Secondly, it's unclear if, because black hasn't made weaknesses on the queen side, the way you would in, for example, a Spanish opening with A6 and B5, white doesn't have an easy breakthrough on the queen side. In a Spanish, you just throw A4 in, target the B5 pawn or the C4 square. It's not quite so easy here. Knight A3, he wants to go to C4, that's reasonable. Okay, H3 is one of those moves that I'm just not sure about. Was bishop G4 really a worry? I would much prefer my opponent to think about bishop G4 than prevent it before they'd even thought about it. So, yeah, I would say that's probably a wasted move. Knight C4, B6. Yeah, I'd much rather have had an extra move thrown in. B4, so if bishop A6, we can probably go B5 if we want to. And now knight D7. So black's clearly wanting to go F5. And yeah, H3 certainly doesn't help you in that sort of position. Bishop here, F6, bishop E3. So he's asking for F5. So we've got to be quick. Is it bishop G5 anyway? Probably. So bishop G5. Thank you. You can't move your queen because we take the D6 pawn. So you've got to put something in the way. Let's say bishop F6. And now take. I wonder if this is the idea. May well be. All that means is you can't take with the knight. How about you take with the rook? But maybe, and I'm not sure about this, I can do this anyway. Now I'm in a pin there, so I'm very nervous about my knight on E5. But I may be able to back it up with F4, and the main point is takes. I can go D6, and if your knight moves, then I win the rook in the corner. Of course, that's not the end of the story. I can go bishop here, for example, takes rook C8. If rook D8 check, I'm going back to F8. And feels as if white should be better here, but it's actually very difficult to find the way to do it. Possibly, and I'm not sure this works, check, rook here, bishop d5. And probably this is going well for white, more than probably. It looks winning. And here they say you just got to go a pawn down. So actually, is this actually the way to play? It likes rook d6 even more, but okay. Bishop d5 is clearly better for white. So okay, so that means f5 is not so easy to play. So he goes bishop a6. He wants to close the queen side. And also, if you go knight fd2 here to back up your knight, then you're less well placed for bishop g5, and f5 can be played. So if that bishop wasn't protected, I'd be looking for discoveries. But okay, we can go a5. The question is whether we can go, sorry, b5, whether we can go a5 as well. And I'm not sure about that. But the other idea might be perhaps to go queen a2, just to set up all those tricky combinations with d6 in a different fashion. Now, then it's possible to take and play f5. And it's really hard to know how to assess this position because f4 could be annoying. I'd like to go knight g5, but I think f4 is a good reply. And I don't seem to have any of these tricky combinations. So is black better now? No, they say there is something good. h4. Come on. Most irrelevant move on the board. Okay, h4, f4. Bishop back, yeah? I guess it trying. Okay, let's go h6 to play g5. And they can't find a good move here for white. King h1, rook db1, queen e2. They're nothing moves. They're waiting for g5, and then you take and go knight h2 and try and come in on the light squares. But they like white, but I don't know. It's sometimes those pawn attacks can be quite scary. But without a light squared bishop, maybe it's much harder to get through. So bishop a6. So just as a general principle, I think I would play queen a2 and get out of the pin. I don't think I'm going to have any combinations if I don't get out of the pin. Right now, Harvey Zhu is burning time. How long did he spend on bishop g5? Oh no, he's already used up a lot of time around here. He didn't play that. He hasn't moved yet. But okay, so queen a2 has to be the right move. And we'll see how it goes from there. Zheng Qilin against George C. Really interesting battle of the 40-year-olds. Both were really, really strong players around 2010. Zheng Qilin was up around the 2400 mark. George C. was getting 3 grandmaster norms. But as everyone discovers, once you get into your late 20s, things start getting worse. And prime example being Magnus Carlsen established his peak rating ages ago. So this queen d6 against the in the Scandinavian. I actually played this against Garry Kasparov in a tournament in Georgia, where I left Australia the day after 9/11 in America. And it took 3 days to get to Georgia because of the security on all the flights. And it didn't help that there was sort of a 7-hour bus trip at the end of it to get to Batumi. And then I get to the hotel at about 2 in the morning and they say, you're playing 2 games against Kasparov tomorrow. I wasn't in great shape. I played okay. But on the way over, on the flights, I had been given a copy of a new book on the Queen D6 Scandinavian, and since my whole chess base had crashed just before I flew out and I didn't have access to it, I thought I may as well read it. And he made a very good case for it. He not only made a good case for Queen d6, but he also claimed to have refuted Queen a5. And at least at that time, which was my main line, and at that time I hadn't managed to refute what he was writing. So I sat down against Kasparov and thought, okay, let's play Queen d6. And actually, at some point, Black had a winning position, but as usual with jet lag, I was playing way too slowly. We were in the days before increment. I had about 25 seconds left. He had about 50. And I knew I wasn't going to make it because it wasn't a simplified position at all. But that's the only time I played Queen d6. But it has been adopted, most notably by Sergei Tivyakov, who I think wrote a book about it. And the book I was reading was by a guy called Michael Meltz. And I did write the intro to the book, and I was able to include the Kasparov game in the intro as well. And so if you're inspired enough to play the move against Kasparov, then it can't be that bad. Around here, I certainly didn't play g6. I think I played a c6 variation, perhaps. There's also bishop g4. So g6, and now Jilin plays a relatively modern idea, which is to knock the queen around and let your knight get forced back, but come here. Because actually the knight on c3 in a Scandinavian usually doesn't go anywhere. When Black has a pawn on c6, the knight doesn't have a good square, whereas going to c4 makes a lot of sense. Now, you don't want to go to c4 immediately. Even bishop takes, queen b4 doesn't actually win a piece, but it's not bad, but it's better to get developed. Rook e1, bishop d3. So she refuses to play knight c4. Maybe she's considering c4 at some point, but so bishop g4. By the way, right now, Zhang Jilin was threatening rook takes e6. Pawn takes, bishop takes, pawn check, and that will be a huge advantage for white. The knight will come into c4 and then e5, and Black's king will be wandering around the middle of the board. It's barely even a material sacrifice, rook for bishop and pawn. Half a pawn sacrifice, give or take. So that's why George immediately plays bishop g4, but he has a bit of a problem now because the e7 pawn's a bit weak. So after c3, you could play h3, but it is gambiting the d4 pawn. So c3, he hurries back with queen d8. So you could play h3 if you wanted. She waits one move. And a5. So white has a pair of bishops. That h6 move by Black is really not to be recommended. If you don't have a light squared bishop, you don't want your kingside weakened like that. But it is not easy for white to make a breakthrough. This is really like a g6 Caro-Kann position. And white has to be very patient around here to achieve anything. Now, you could play knight e5 with the idea if they take, you take back, and then you go e6 and try to break things up, break up the white squares. But I'd probably recommend something a bit quieter. Now, I'd like to go b3 and bishop a3, but I think knight d5 is just very annoying. So instead, she went bishop f4 and bishop back. The one good thing for Black's point of view of having a4 and a5 thrown in is that when white plays c4, the knight will always have a good square on b4 to jump into. So the addition of a4, a5 favours Black and means Black is not that badly off here. So e6 played. So the natural move here would be rook a d1 because Black wants to play c5 or e5. So you want your rook on the d file just to make it as hard as possible to play. Queen e2. Please explain. Is bishop takes g6 coming? I doubt it. So h5. Knight d6 is coming. So she wants to take on f7 at some point, perhaps. Or b7. So let's see. h4 played. Bishop back. Queen g5. So why can't we take a b7 pawn? If knight f4, we just take it. What am I missing? Knight f4 is absolutely nothing. Why can't you take this guy? Maybe I should start with knight f4. Just to stop the knight coming back to d6. And this position is probably absolutely satisfactory because you can't get b4 easily, even though black is a pawn down. Yeah, I suspect this is okay. We can play rook b8, tie you down. Queen g5, tie you down to that one. Yeah, it's definitely slightly better for white because you do have an extra pawn, but shouldn't be much at all. And the computer says black's better. Oh, bishop e5 is coming. And then you're going to have to do something ugly like queen f3. And oh, sorry, no, the queen can take it at the moment. But yeah, but bishop e5 will come. Queen e4. Okay, let's have a look. Queen e4. Yeah, I guess so. Take. Do I want to take? Of course I don't. Queen c7. It's true. Yeah, definitely a bit better for white, but I think I can go bishop f6 and king g7 if I really need to. I'm more worried about rook e6 and queen g6, but it's probably not mate. So, yeah, they think black is okay here. So Jilin decided to play knight e4, which is clever. Queen back, and now bishop c4. Why? There's no way I want to take on d5. Unless knight d6 is coming anyway. That's a very weird move. Maybe it's directed against c5 or e5. If you do that sort of move, then we take on d5 and leave you with an isolated pawn. But okay, white should just play rook a d1, maybe put the bishop back on a2, where your opponent might not notice it. Definitely, oh, they say it's a big advantage. Okay. I would have said a little one, but the computer really likes the bishops. And certainly it's easy for George to break out. He is way ahead on the clock, though, 40 minutes ahead on the clock. So the real question is whether Jilin runs shorter of time or whether she just keeps control and plays quick, sensible moves around here. Because certainly rook a1, queen f3, and knight d6 maybe if you wanted, or if they move their other knight to f6, you can go to c5 if you need to. And you'll constantly have some ideas of sacrificing on e6 or whatever. So, yeah, this is definitely rather good for Zhang Jilin, and the third seed is going to have some problems today. Okay, Darryl Johansson, we have not looked at that game yet, and it is a knight f3, knight f6 Sicilian. Okay, if you play knight c3 here to try to get back into a normal line, they're probably going to go d5, and it gets super complicated. So the main line is to push, knight c3, and now you can certainly play e6 here. It's the famous gambit line with, let's say, d4 takes. Oh no, we won't take. We'll play knight c6. Takes, takes. And now there are two main lines. There's d6 and there's queen b6. Both of them are a lot of fun for black, but if white knows what they're doing, they tend to work out quite well. So yeah, if you d6 has a downside that When you threaten the f pawn, white can go queen e4 check and queen h4 and protect f2 that way. So queen b6 is a really sharp one. Then you go bishop here. Let's say bishop takes check, king here, castles, rook f1, let's say. Or knight g5 first. Rook f1, bishop back, knight here. Let's see. Knight e6 looks like the main move, and maybe that's okay. I might be missing something around here. What is recommended? Rook f1, bishop c5, knight g5. Oh, that's right. There's also knight e5 here. So knight g5 is not the right move because knight e5 is super annoying. It's amazing this works, but it seems like it does. But okay, knight g5 is anyway. It's a complicated line. Johansson doesn't want to see it. Knight takes, pawn takes, and now knight c6. So black's plan here is to go e6, b6, bishop b7, knight c6, queen c7, and castle queenside. And then maybe later play d6 or f6 and break up the center. But black is arguing that white doesn't really have any targets and the double pawns prevent white from blowing the whole thing open. Now, you've got to be super careful here because if you start with b6, white will play e6. And you're already very close to dead, which is hard to believe. If you take this way, we go knight e5, and then it's not so hard to believe because we've got queen f3 and queen h5 check coming up. And your king is in a total mess. And so is the rook in the corner. So you take this way, we swap, and we throw knight here in. You move. We'll give you a check. Let's say bishop d7, take, bishop f4, and a6, bishop c6 wins the exchange. But if you don't do it, we're going castles queenside, and you're pretty dead. I think you could play sort of a6, bishop c6. Oh no, rook a7, bishop b8 still wins. So maybe rook c8 here. Yeah, it's horrible, but yeah, it's horribler than you can imagine. So yeah, anyway, so e6 is a good move. That's all you need to know. You can work it out later. So b6 is not played anymore. I'll probably be proved wrong. Probably in the title Tuesday, people have been getting away with it for ages, but certainly Johansson's not going to allow that. Knight here, bishop here, and queen b6 is one of the new ideas because white wants to castle queenside. But if they play b3, for example, then their king's not as safe, and we can play moves like queen a5. And you don't really want to go queen c1 because you still can't castle. So b3 is the main move. Instead, rook b1, Johansson's super happy because white cannot anymore castle queenside, and black is going to go queenside. So white's doing all the good, healthy, developing moves. It's one of those positions that Mihai Suba talks about in dynamic chess strategy, where you put everything on a good square and then you run out of things to do. So queen e2 and rook d1 would be a plan. Instead, he wants to put his knight on d6. But if you do, we're going to take it and put our queen on b8 and then go f6 and e5. And if you're lucky, you might win that d6 pawn. If you're unlucky, black might play queen a8 and attack you down the long diagonal. So this looks like it should be good for white. I mean, forcing the queen to b8, all that sort of thing. But it's not the right sort of position for the bishops. It's not clear what white can do next. I guess what's that, queen g4? b4. Okay, makes a lot of sense. Trying to make use of the rook on b1, yeah? Okay, so what are we going to do? Let's say e5, go away. Take the pawn. Pawn takes, yep. So how do I want to play it now? So is c4, c5 coming? I don't know. Probably is. I'm pretty safe on b8, but is this clearly better for white? Yeah, they like b8, c4, and c5. So they reckon this is good for white after b4. Mm. Wow. So they want to play knight a5 here. I don't want to play knight a5 here. But at least it gives c6. No, it doesn't really give c6 to the queen. So back to live moves. He has not played knight d6 check yet. Oh, he has. This is the position. Okay. Now they say bishop g4, which I don't understand. But b4's got to be a good move, yeah? Yeah. And they want bishop c4 just because they reckon they can play b4 without worrying about losing their d6 pawn. And also, if e5, maybe there'll be some weak pawns left behind. But b4 played. So Leo Kalina, the junior from Melbourne, is really going for Grandmaster Daryl Johansson. Yeah, he's got to go e5. I mean, you need to get rid of that d6 pawn when you can. Okay, the next board down, Odenthal and Zafirakis made a draw. Was it of any interest? Not especially. London system, not even the most aggressive method by white. And Jesse Zafirakis offered the draw. He's the higher rated player. And yeah, I thought for some players the tournament might nearly be over. Any other draws? Yep, we've got. What's that, sorry? A lot worse? Hang on. So you're saying you can't play c5 here because c4 here? And you didn't want to go to d7 either, yeah? Okay. But it doesn't feel that bad. Why do you reckon it's disastrous? I'm happy to put my bishop on e6. Are you going to go knight g5 or knight e5? Knight g5, I'll go back again to d7. I don't think g4 and knight e5 are going to really hurt you. I mean, maybe in an ending there'll be lots of space, but your position's pretty indestructible. I agree the knight on a6 looks a bit funny, but it's possible to reposition it later. I mean, once the queens come off. Yeah, I wouldn't say no to a draw here if I were 100 points lower rated and one wasn't having a good tournament. So I think it's easy to get depressed in the opening when it doesn't go the way you want, but usually the margins are quite small. So yeah, you haven't got a promising position, but you haven't got a disastrous position either. So yeah, it's just not fun. Yeah, nobody likes having a position where they don't know what to do, but it doesn't mean their opponent can make lots of progress either, especially quiet stuff like this. You've usually got a fair margin for error. Sorry, what do you want to play? Knight. Oh, okay, yeah. That's always a question. Sorry, here, yeah? Yeah, dc5, because if knight takes, you might lose a pawn, you mean, or? Yeah, And then we have to go knight FD7, I suppose. And yeah, it's not fun, but if you get E5 in, it may be playable. And the knight can come back to E6 later and get rid of that bishop, and you'll survive. Again, not fun, but totally survivable. Okay, Heather Richards, who had a bit of a demoralising loss yesterday. Has a very weird position against Ethan Chang. Heather's setting up for chess 960 again. She had that sort of game against, who was it? Ryder Testelen, and the pieces never got off the back rank. So what's going on here? It's another Jabava system. Takes, bishop g4, bishop d7. Okay, this is certainly playable. I think a lot of people would prefer something like queen b6 here, I think, is annoying. But anyway, there's lots of ways of playing this with black. This is just one of them. And yeah, you give away g4, but the knight on g1 is a bit stupid. So a3, it looks like she doesn't want to go queenside. The natural idea would be to go queenside, but after you play a3, you'll get hit by b5, b4. So a3, it's inviting b5. And yeah, white's king is not perfect. Whoa. Yeah, you can't say this is natural play by white. Oh, and again, I would have played knight e3. Is she really going to go kingside and get hit by h5? Yeah, maybe she has to. But yeah, there's no doubt at all that white's pieces are weird, and black's king on e8 is a lot safer than the king on e1. So that knight d7 move looks like she wants to put another knight covering c4, and also to try to win that pawn on a4. And that makes a lot of sense, because the way white's setting up, you're not really attacking that b3 pawn enough. So yeah, this is really awkward for Heather. Of course, losing a4 is not a disaster, but if the bishop takes and we can go back to b5 later, maybe it could be really bad. And yeah, because what is Richards doing? She's going to have to find a way to play actively. g4 looks great, except it's not hitting anything at all. So maybe knight e3. Will there ever be a c4 move? I doubt it. So all in all, this is, yeah, I would say black is doing fine. Castles, bishop e7, knight e3. Yeah, they've suddenly switched to liking black a little bit more. Long term, I just feel like white's king will be the less safe, and that'll make things quite difficult. Okay, Bias Garland has already won. How did they get through 30 moves in no time at all? Especially in a Queen's Gambit exchange variation. Bias Garland is very happy to play the black side of this. Okay, so she plays bishop d6. This is another of these moves that are not classical at all. You're supposed to break the pin with bishop e7. The idea is usually to throw a6 in and play knight d7 and queen c7, but you can also play bishop e6 like the other line we saw. So here, why can't you take on h7, for example? What happens? If rook takes bishop f6 and queen takes rook, and it's the exchange and a pawn up. If you play g6, I want to take this guy. Now maybe rook g8. Better for black, perhaps? Yep, I've got nothing better than taking on f6 and letting him take on g2, and there's no way white can be better there. So Ben Leong just played knight e2. And now knight f4. Black's not worried about knight e6 because it will be able to break with c5 or e5 more easily if you do take there. Wow, goes queenside. Okay. And that has to be a really poor set of swaps, because all you've done by starting all these swaps is improve Black's position. So not g5 immediately, rook here, and now e5. Okay, so he's opening up. White will have to go to the king side sometime, and queen here. Now, is this game over, or it looks it? So, oh, he's missing combinations here. If queen e2, knight g4, h4, g5 looks like it's completely winning. Have you got anything else here? f3 loses a pawn. It might be the best move. Might easily be the best move. King here, yeah, I think this loses. Knight g4, h3, and rook takes pawn check. And that's a free queen. Suddenly the knight's got to go somewhere bad. And it's all over completely. And finally he resigns. So, yeah, it's absolute demolition based on one little combination, which Kishik Bhatta saw and Ben Leong did not. And as I mentioned earlier, blunders at this end of the tournament are unfortunately much more common. I don't think Ben Leong would have missed that. The Queenslander has played a reasonable tournament here. He's only 16, I think. Let's see. What's his seeding? Not sure. He's 17. But it's been one of Australia's good juniors for quite a while. But this is small consolation for Kishik Bhatta, because she was right up the top playing the good players early in the tournament. Winning this game moves her to, 4.5 or something now, maybe 5. Yeah, she gets back to 50%. Okay, not so terrible, but not the sort of performance she would have liked. Kishik Bhatta, just 18 years old, from Mongolia, but has lived in and studied in Sydney for a couple of years, almost 2 years anyway. Two younger brothers as well, who play pretty well. And she has won a lot of tournaments in New South Wales. Just the last 2 weekenders that were held in Sydney, she won. One of them was 7 out of 7. She's already won the New South Wales Championship and the New South Wales Open. Yeah, I was expecting big things from her here, but it was not her tournament. After a couple of losses, she seemed to drop her bundle a bit. And okay, it's good that she's not collapsing at the end, but it's not what she would have wanted. Okay, let's go. Trevor Tao loses. Mobile phone? What? Okay, take. Okay, we left it after queen takes here. Takes. F6. What about knight d4? Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Another little combination missed. Again, a nice sack. So the problem is the knight is hanging. Otherwise, you could just protect your e-pawn. As it is, you either risk taking on d4, or you swap queens, lose the e6 pawn and the d5 pawn. You'll have a passed a pawn. You might have a chance, but it's not promising. So instead, Tao went for this, but he's now got 3 sets of pawn islands, and it's going to be terribly difficult to save this. The knight on b4 guards d5 for the moment, but one king is much safer than the other. So a4 play. I don't even like a4 much, because it destabilizes the knight. Now all of a sudden, e3. Wow. Why don't you pull back with the queen? Did he not see queen d6? The problem is if you move the knight now, bishop takes d5, and if you play rook b7, you're going to get into a horrible pin after rook b1. So he tries defending with the queen, but this looks disastrous. Again, there's a huge pin going on. Bishop d5 looks not bad, but he does it the other way. Oh, you can't take on a4 because of queen b8. You're only going to be a pawn down at the end, aren't you? Pawn down with a bad position, I have to admit. Yeah, I guess he has to take here. Take, move the knight somewhere. And just, yeah, give up that pawn, play this sort of position. Yeah, lose d5. It'll be hard to draw, but I don't think it's more than +1. They say it's only +0.5. Any improvements here? No. So after rook takes pawn, just take it. They say knight d3 instead of knight c6, but same sort of thing. You're going to be playing a 4 against 3 endgame. Now there's a few extra pieces on the board, so it's not trivially drawn, but instead he played rook b7, unfortunately, and he completely forgot that the knight may be protected by 3 pieces, but they're in the wrong order. So he just loses his queen. And why play on? It's, yeah, your king's bad, your rooks aren't doing anything, the white king's totally safe. White's getting ready to take on f6, but you can also just play h4, keep the king in a box, e4, make the bishop the best piece on the board. Yeah, it's a matter of very easy technique. So that is an awful game by Trevor Tao. Yeah, that rook b7 is probably the worst blunder we have seen today, and we've seen a few, because it didn't even require a combination. It just required rook takes. And so, I don't know. Trevor often turns up at the commentary, so we might find out what happened, but that is truly awful. And suddenly Sukai G, I think he has leapfrogged Trevor Tao, who was the main person chasing Yi Liu for such a long time. And I think it's also the only defeat for Tao in this tournament. So Sukai G goes to 6.5, still a 1.5 behind the leader, but in with a chance for third place now. Let's go back to the top game. We left it with Chakrabarti into an endgame with good compensation for 2 pawns. Okay, after queen b6, he thought for quite a while, swapped queens and got this position. And now rook b1, it's okay, but I think I would play rook c1 here. So rook b1, knight c6. Now, if you take on c6 and then rook c6, you're probably okay, but c5, c4 could be annoying. So he plays f4 to keep the bind. But notice how black's king is not trapped anymore. And you haven't even got 1 pawn back yet. So g5 played, g3. This is an absolute bonus for black, because black can get the rook out on g8 without needing to develop the king. So I would say this is slightly better for black now. They think it's seriously better after king e7. Well, we're going to take on b6. So, okay, king e7, rook takes pawn. Why don't they want me to play that? Takes. Big deal. Rook f8. King e3. Rook here. Wow. That is not the first move that comes to mind. And black is getting connected past pawns in the middle, which is not what you want to see. So even though that bishop on c8 is pathetic, apparently it's going okay for Yi Liu. And yeah, I must say, I did prefer rook to c1 even though it's not getting a pawn back. So that is a bit of a problem. And Yi is again taking a difficult position and making it look easy. Tedrick Lee against Ryder Testolin. It looks at first as if Tedrick Lee has control, but there is a very good e5 square here for either the black knight or the black bishop. If you put the knight there, I'm worried that the f6 knight might get hit with bishop h4. But if you put the bishop there, maybe knight f3 dislodges it. So how did they get this? We left it after rook a d1, queen e6. So bishop f2, protecting that pawn, queen c6. Wow. Is he really covering e4? I'm not sure. But e4 is coming. It did come. Take, bishop b7. So that is in order to stop white bowling you over with e5, but you can play d5. The real question is, if you can play d5, can you follow with e5? Otherwise, it might not work out so well. So they say knight g3. I was thinking knight f4. But the computer does not want you to move your pawn center. Whichever pawn you move, well, one allows mate, but it also allows the black pieces a lot more freedom. At the moment, the knight on d7 has no squares, or no good squares. So I like knight g3. Just overprotecting the pawn on e4. Maybe knight f5 will come in, bishop h4 or something like that. That looks super healthy. Instead, d5, and I think Testolin will be pretty happy. So he gets control over e5, knight d4. Okay, so at the moment, that b5 pawn's a bit weak. Are we actually worried about it? Well, perhaps. But if we go queen d6, then bishop g3 is possible. So they say white is still better. And in fact, they wanted knight e5 straight away rather than bishop c7. Yeah, knight d4 is just tactical opportunism. If you can grab that pawn on b5 and hang on to it, then the c4 pawn will be weak. And even though black's pieces control a lot of central squares, you should be able to consolidate. So actually, bishop c7 wasn't so good. Or you could argue that, oh no, we didn't have a choice here. We had to go to a6, which means that, the knight d4 becomes a serious problem. So Tedrick Lee is also looking like winning. So the top two players look like they're going to stretch their lead because their nearest rival, Trevor Tao, has just gone down. Let's see how the person who was equal third, Li Trikien, is doing against Sterling Backer. It's a complicated ending, but okay. I must say, if that G-pawn can't be protected, then things have gone wrong. I don't want to play G4 here. I really don't. I think that pawn will fall off the board. So what did he do wrong? After rook G1, he can't move his bishop, can he? So they say knight F6 is okay. And here they do say G4 is the best move. Wow. Or C4 followed by G4. Okay, really? I mean, after G4, why can't we go F3 as well? And just undermine that pawn. Or maybe we should be playing H5 and then rook H4 and undermining that pawn. It's hard to believe that isn't working out well. Now, black can defend with a knight on F6, I guess. What's that, sorry? After G4. After F3, you go H5, so we start with H5. Yep. And you probably go knight F6. And maybe it's okay. It's not impossible. I mean, the computer thinks it's okay, but it looks like it's hanging from a thread simply because your rook on G8 is not protected, but maybe that thread holds. Okay, further down, we saw Harvey Zhu with a very weird position against David Cannon. We left it after bishop A6 here. B5 was played. Knight B2, what are you doing? F5 isn't playable, but it is after knight B2. So right now, only one side of the board is active, and that is the king side, and black seems to have the initiative there. White will never take on f4 because it just opens up for all black's pieces. So a5 played. And this is perhaps an impractical Harvey Zhu. He could leave that side of the board closed and run his king. He could even, so bishop c3, king f1, and so on, and run away. But he wants to keep winning chances. Unfortunately, that side of the board doesn't look that special for white. g5 played, because before there would have been a knight h2, but now g5 is coming. He blocks everything, king f7, and now he might run his king. Okay, so around here, white has to just stay as alert as possible. I think white should probably put a knight on b5. If you take it, then the queen side is open. If you don't take it, then the knight will be annoying, hitting d6 and making it just that much harder for the black king to find safety on the queen side. But it's at the moment, white's knights are not well set up to get there. But you've got to go knight c2, knight a3. So bishop c3, I don't understand at all. It does clear a path for the king. So rook h8, and Harvey Zhu is half an hour behind on the clock. He's going to have to go f3, I would think, because black will get h5 even if you have to play knight f6 first. So he's trying to stop knight f6. He's setting him up for bishop takes e5 if knight f6. And then pawn takes in d6. But his knights are still badly placed for jumping in on d5. So even that doesn't look like a great plan. So it's just a trap. But will he start with bishop f3? Oh no, hang on, bishop e5 is not even possible. So yeah, the knight can come to g6 indeed. Yeah, so in most of these positions, you want to go f3. And you just argue that black has no progressive plan. But now that the queen side's open, there's more chances for black to get through. I guess Zhu didn't want a totally passive position. Yeah, he's 13 years old, and a block position, he's probably hardly played block positions. So he is setting his opponent up for knight d3 and a sack on e5 at some point. But honestly, it doesn't, it's not the sort of thing I'd be going for. Okay, Zhang Jilin had a good position against George C when we left it. And she still has a good position, so it hasn't changed much. What did happen? Knight e4, queen h6, bishop here, knight f6. She doesn't go knight c5, just improves her pieces. And the knight goes back again. So George C's done well to swap off some pieces, but white still doesn't have a way through because if you play c4, there's always knight b4. So how can you try to be better here with white? Is rook e4 a move? But it's really hard to attack that pawn with your bishop, so it's not great. So, yeah, I don't really see how either side makes progress. Bishop d3 played. Is she really thinking about c4? I don't know. Well, the computer wants to play bishop c4 in a couple of moves' time. So I think it's just a nice position without any easy way to make progress. And a draw offer might be more sensible for Zhang Jilin than trying to push too hard. Okay, Leah Kalina stood well against Dara Johansson, really well. After b4, g5 was played, not e5, bishop back, and now f5. Yeah, I'd love to take on c5. I really would. Okay, let's see what happens. bc5, f4, take here. Probably we take on d6. Unfortunately then, oh no, that's okay. King takes. Oh, bishop e4. Oh, then king c7. Yep, so yeah, at the moment there's no big discoveries. But what about bishop e4 first? And that is game over. Oh, no, well, it's close to game over. It's not game over, but it looks annoying. So after f5, b5. Gee, Johansson will be pleased to see that. It allows the bishop to get to e5 if you move your knight, but it does make the rook on b1 less effective. So I'm wondering if we could play f4 anyway. Let's see. Takes, bishop takes. Now, it feels like something bad's going to happen to black, but the bishop can come back to b7. a4, a5 might be possible. First, you really need to take the pressure off d6. Not sure how to do that. How bad is this? Not much. Really not much. So b5 is not great. Even knight a5, they say, is not bad. Doesn't it lose a pawn? Apparently not. So b5 is just, yeah, a crazy move closing the queen side. And black has a number of good responses. Okay, so he has played f4. Yeah, and Johansson will be quite relieved, and he's ahead on the clock. Let's go back to the top guys. Chakrabarti was not getting enough compensation for his 2 pawns. Takes. And now Yi's got to find a good move, and he's probably got a few. The computer recommends king e7, which is, yeah, putting your king on d6 makes a lot of sense in this sort of position, and then maybe e7. So that's also good, but anyway, Yi's having a good think about it. He is 20 minutes behind his 11-year-old opponent. On board 2, Ryder Testelen has given up that pawn on b5, but he has lots of active pieces. Can he do anything with it? What about queen g6? It's throwing over to h5, but can we do anything over there? I don't know. There might be rook f5 when we're not looking. So is white better here? He went queen g6, rook f3, h3. Okay, all reasonable, but that bishop wants to stay on e5. So all in all, this is fun for black, but the computer says it's not actually sound. Okay, that was a win in the reserves, but John Stewart Plant, the reserves leader, has been taken down. Now, William Rumley, they had the most exciting game, and yet it's turned out as a draw. Okay, this is a bishop g5 Naidov, popular long before either Rumley or Narahara Sethi were born. They're both teenagers. e6, f4, bishop e7, queen h6. Okay, that's at least slightly trendy, but Rumley's played it before in this tournament. Queen c7, bishop e2, not to d3, which is the other main line. e5, and now bishop takes, knight takes, e5. I think this is almost an old Keres game. Bishop e7, and did he take on f6 here? And answer bishop f3 with bishop f3? That's my memory. And maybe h6 wasn't thrown in. And I think white won something brilliantly, but I'm not totally sure. This is probably worth checking. Download game. So I first of all will check this position, but I think without h6 will be more common. So queen g3 played in 105 games. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so let's go back to here. and do without h6. Okay, and now we need to go to the old days. 1964, that sounds about right. And what have we got? No carriers game here. But people have taken here. Bishop takes, rook c8, and we've actually got an Australian game from Ballarat. And this was 2 rooks for the, oh, hang on, no. Yeah, it was only a rook and a piece. And okay. It goes crazy. You'd think White was doing okay, but he lost. And any really good players? No. So not so common to play this. So Queen G3, as played. Is very common. What was the move played here? Queen G3, D5 and Knight D5. Really? Let's have a look. D5, takes back, Knight D5, Knight E6, looks fun, takes, check, looks almost winning. Bishop G4 threatens to take on D5 twice. Rook E1, I guess. Okay, how much did these guys know? Because I'm guessing a lot. Ah, the trick. So Rook E1 was bad because of queen check. And Will Rumley has happily gone into a pawn down, opposite bishop's position, where, yeah, it should be drawable. He took back with the bishop because he didn't want to swap all the rooks off immediately. And now he's swapping off all the pawns off. And there's no bishop c4 or bishop c6 check because of it. And, yeah, they agree to draw. Rook e3 is coming. At some point, White will have to swap rooks. So it really is an equal position. So that's a bit of a relief for Narahara Sethi, who really has, well, he was on a really good score about halfway through, ran into Darragh Johansson, got a drawn rook ending, 2 against 1, managed to lose it. And after that, somehow he never recovered. But so this is not exactly a solid draw, but it does show how well the Tasmanian champion William Rumley has prepared. And I suspect his preparation extended all the way to this endgame where he believed he could draw. And he certainly could. Okay, games we haven't looked at. 14-year-old Daniel Wang from Sydney up against South Australian champion Min Ren. Min Ren's playing okay, is he? But he hasn't got many pawns left. Okay, there's 3 connected. This is hard to judge. White is... No, black is 2 pawns for... How many pawns have we got? White has 2 pawns up and has a rook for 2 pieces. Normally that would be material equality, but if black can get c5 and b5 in, then it's going to be pretty bad. And at the moment, it's really hard to push those pawns on. H4 is impossible, g5 is impossible. So the only thing I can think that white is going to be able to do is to play c3 and undermine that knight as early as possible. Now, c3 doesn't look bad. Yeah, so let's see. I would say clear advantage black. Very clear. Bishop h6. That way after c3, you can go d3. c5 is another one. Then I could go c3 and swap, but the d pawn would become passed. So they really like black. Okay. So Daniel Wang's in trouble again. He has collapsed towards the end of this tournament. And this one, Pritam is positionally really suffering. His bishop probably should sit on g7 and hang on to the e5 pawn, but it doesn't feel like fun. So if b5 here, we're just pushing the d pawn and then grabbing on e5. So really not much to be done here. Jack Rogers should win with his Trompovsky attack. And Ted Power, the 15-year-old from Sydney, who's done really well against another Sydney 15-year-old, Jean Rusakov. Is that knight on g3 doomed or good? I'd vote doomed. Black can't get f5 quickly. It looked like black had this great attack, and then his knight on h5 got trapped. So here, after bishop f1, black stands quite well. I could imagine playing c6 here, and I think black should be very happy with the position. Or is g4 a problem? I don't know. g4, I can just go queen g6, but knight h4 would be a draw. So maybe it's not better for black, but after taking, his knights are in all sorts of bother, and he just doesn't have anything to do here. And so Ted Power is probably losing. What? Queen e7, king g2, f5? Oh, with an e4 break. It's clever. King g2, f5. Unbelievable. Okay, this is not a human attack. Take h5. Rook takes knight check, probably. No, knight h, what? And if knight takes queen g5 and the rook's coming in, and okay. You could possibly see that when f5 was available, but to find it in order to play queen e7 to play f5, it needs a certain level of desperation. So don't trust the computer. There is only one move that even stays alive for black here. And well, if Ted Power finds it, I'll be super impressed. But I don't think it looks more natural to try to play knight h4 and hang on to the knight for a bit longer with a queen on h4. It may not work, but maybe you can get some threats against h3. So something like this looks like the natural move. And then what can we do? I mean, this is the sort of thing I want to do to get my knight out. And I don't see why I can't. So why not? Isn't this fine for black? Yep, this is fine for black. So what do you do here? You play king f2. What? Okay, yeah. I mean, it is a good move, king f2, but it's not very natural to walk into a pin like that. There's things I'd be scared of, like knight h5 and bishop h3, but presumably they don't work because the computer isn't suggesting them. Just a reminder, that Ben Leong was the first to lose. And then Trevor Tao had a giant accident so I presume you just forgot about rook takes b4. And because queen takes is just drawable, yeah? do something like that. Of course, it's a lot of fun for white, but yeah, I wish you hadn't played f6. But apart from that, you've got the 7th covered. What's that, sorry? Oh, yeah. This was the little combination we mentioned before. Queen b6, queen c7. You were expecting knight takes knight? Right. Yep. Does that work? So white's still better. I wouldn't say it's very much better, but we're going to get a position with 2 rooks for the queen. And the problem for black is that pawn on a5 probably has moved up too fast so that white can just go rook a3, double on the pawn and win it. So normally I'd regard that as a valuable a pawn, for example, the queen against 2 rooks that Yi Liu had. But here, it doesn't feel great. White's king safe, black's king not so safe, and that's always crucial in a queen against 2 rooks position. Well, in fact, after queen check, apparently knight f6 is completely safe. And g4, that sort of stuff doesn't work. So you're fine. Well, you already has to do something about his knight. So presumably knight here or something like that. And I don't know what we should play here. H5. Yeah, possibly rook c8 first, yeah. Anyway, it's no big worry for black, even though the pin is a bit annoying on that long diagonal. So that should be okay. Let's go back to our top game, Ranj Chakrabarti. So he has got 1 of his pawns back, not 2, but that bishop on c8 is still bad. So the problem for black is black's pawns are a bit all over the shop too. So this is extremely good drawing chances for Chakrabarti. So how did we get it? Takes. He went rook g8. And now, okay, the recommended line here, by the way, just so I should mention it, is king e7. And after rook takes here, just rook f8, protect the pawn, and rook a4. And then black gets connected past pawns. And this is seriously dangerous for white. But instead, rook g8. So he's going active. But yeah, white's big job here is to swap off as many pawns as possible. Black has to be a little bit careful because white's a pawn, if it starts moving, could be quite dangerous. But and of course, white could do the Yi plan of king e5, king d4, king e5, king f6 in mating. So you have to be careful about the hyperactive king as well. And maybe hide on d6. And even the bishop on c8, it has to get out sometime. But if you go bishop b7, then rook c7 is really annoying. It might be the way to go, and then bishop a6 and just play chess and accept that it's probably going to be a draw. But yeah, with white having a better king, better bishop, and slightly more active rook, I reckon they will say zeros here. No, rook h3. King d4 is impossible because of rook a4 check. No, it isn't. So the advantage they thought black had is starting to diminish a lot. He played rook check. Why can't I go to d4? There's got to be some problem here. Rook check. King e5. Bishop moves. We don't have time to stop king e7. Hang on. Oh, this is amazing. takes, takes, check, king here, bishop takes, check, check. And even with the rook behind the pawn, if we win the f4 pawn, the connected pawns are going to win. I mean, you could attack my rook, for example. You could have played king c3 here and king b3 and got the pawn moving. But we can easily block the pawn. In fact, they're saying, do it with your king. King a7. And as long as we keep our connected pawns, white is doomed. So king d2 is more sensible. That's all we're saying. Okay, board 2, Ryder Testelin, looking good except for the number of pawns he had. Okay, he has an extremely threatening kingside attack, which may or may not be going anywhere. The threat is knight g3 check, followed by queen h5. Are you no? Yeah, that would work. So what about rook f3 here? Now we could grab the exchange if we wanted, I guess, but I'm really worried about e5. But maybe it doesn't work. I have to go h3 here and then you take on e5. So e5 doesn't work. Let's say I play that anyway. And we could go back to e5. We've got our material back and the bishop on g3 is going to have to be swapped off post-haste. So actually queen d2 was probably not the world's greatest move here. So is this enough for black? They say knight f5. Okay. If I go knight g3, I doubt that you can take with the pawn and block with the knight. So you take, bishop takes. Could be okay. Okay, so they're saying you have to play this. Check. Take, take, h3, queen h5, the sort of thing we looked at, although I was going knight e5. But they think after knight e2, white is better. And that's probably true, because you don't actually have an attack over here. Until your bishop can go to c8 and take on h3, that's not going to be a big attack. He played knight e2. Makes sense. So have we got time for some sort of combination? I'm thinking about c3 and bishop a6 to try to get rid of that knight and then play knight g3 and mate you. Probably it doesn't work because after bishop a6, you've always got bishop d3. But if I start with bishop a6, could be good. Okay, let's try. I don't know what we're planning to do. Knight here, c3, pawn takes. Probably it's not working. We can't really build up the pressure, can we? Knight f4, I don't trust. Yeah, so probably not working. Not working. Looked nice, but not good enough. So Ryder Testelin, even though it looks like he's got a good attack, if Tedrick Lee defends carefully, he is pawn up with another one on c4 that's likely to fall if we get some sort of ending. And also, all black's pieces are set up for the kingside attack. If it doesn't get through, then they're not very well placed. So you have to keep attacking here. And I don't see how white increases the pressure. Sorry, black increases the pressure. And white's got plenty of nice things to do. Rook f3, knight f5. So really, black has to be fast. And knight g3 just doesn't work. So Tedrick Lee is closing in on Yi Liu because Yi may not be winning But Chakrabarty's having a big think. He's got plenty of time, eminently reasonable to see if he can get away with king d4. If he can, that'll be great, but king d2 is more modest, and it also gives your opponent a chance to just try to take a perpetual check and rather than play for the win. So, yeah, very decent move, rook check. Board 4, Li Tri Kien is the only one left with a chance of catching Yi Liu if Yi Liu loses. And this has gone a bit strangely. So g4 played. We saw that. Bayaka is doing okay. King d2. So I must admire the way that Li is playing this, because he's not rushing at all. And now I think black maybe should throw h5 in round here. But there's always a question of whether it's worth taking on d4 or whether it's worth playing c4. And but once you play h5, at least your bishop on f8 is a bit more free to move. You don't have to worry as much. There's one other idea. I don't know if it's going to work, and that is to swap rooks and go knight e4 and try to make an e4 check, try to make that work. I'm just not sure. Let's see. So takes, knight check. If you take with the bishop, pawn takes, and if your knight moves, then we take on d4. That feels pretty good. So let's say you take with the knight, bishop takes, and you take here. That is not working. Therefore, I have to swap on d4 first, but I don't get a chance because you're going to take with the knight. So, okay, so that plan is not so great, but I'm sure they think this is equal. No, black is better. c4, rook g1, bishop d7. Weird. c4, rook e1, bishop d7, and then trying to play b5, b4. Wow. Okay, not the sort of plan I would have thought of, but the computer is saying what Bayaka may already have realised, and that is that white is not actually threatening anything here. White's got pieces on nice squares on the king side, but they're not really going anywhere. So you don't have to panic about the that side of the board. So yeah, Li is not doing that well. What about Harvey Zhu in the extremely blocked game? Extremely blocked game. Yeah, well, I admire the way Harvey Zhu is playing this. He is trying desperately to sacrifice on e5 when his opponent's not looking. But right now he's probably looking. Okay, we left it after bishop c3, rook h8 was played, knight c2, knight f6, and he doesn't have a sack on e5, so he had to play f3, knight a3, and knight b5. So as I said before, black really doesn't want to take that particularly, especially if we could take back with the pawn and play knight c4 and maybe a5 in some position. But if you don't take it, it's just a very, very annoying knight. So takes. And white isn't even bothering with king f2. You can play that later. The big question here will be, is there going to be a sacrifice on g4? Rook h4 and sack on g4, getting two connected pawns. If that works, then your position could be quite good. In order to do that, though, we're going to have to double rooks on the h-file. And you never know, white might take the opportunity to play a5 at some point. So knight d3 played. Well, it doesn't look like he wants to... okay, he wants to sack on e5 with the bishop here. So he covers e5, which is not the square you want. Does he want to sacrifice again? I don't know. But this is David Cannon, the international master from Melbourne, simply getting scared of all these tactical ideas. So for the first time in the game, it's conceivable that Harvey Zhu should just go king f2 and take the h-file himself. I mean, and you have other moves. I mean, there are things like knight a7, threatening knight c6. It allows knight d5, but that looks quite risky. So here, I think king f2 and rook h1 could be good. But of course, right now, black may have started thinking about knight f6 and knight takes g4, especially if your king is on f2. So you do have to be careful about that. He played that. No, black is not trying to sack on a g4 at the moment. You have to keep worrying about that. Oh, right, after king g6, if knight f6, we still sacrifice on e5. So, okay, he's going to play rook h1. He's only got 9 minutes left. He may as well play reasonably fast. He has certainly managed to worry white with all these sacrifices. Now, we could even take on d6 and take on e5 and get central pawns if we wanted. But at the end of it, there would be a weak c4 pawn. So I'm not sure I recommend it at all. So I think throw rook h1 in and just see if we can do something on that side. So the computer will say zeros probably. No? They want rook h1, knight f6, queen c2. Oh, that sets up some discoveries on the king. But I'd be interested to see if that advantage grows at all. Or whether it's just they like white because white's got more space, but actually you can't do much. So they're saying rook h1 and then king g1, and then later, the king's safe. But knight f4 is never going to work because there won't be an e5 check. You could always take with the g pawn. But I am amazed they think white is better here. But this is not the position where you waste your time because the crisis is going to happen later. You have to actually play just lots of healthy moves. You already know, for example, if you're Harvey Zhu, that David Cannon does not want to take on b5. He's already made that completely clear that he's not going to help you by taking on b5. Therefore, even though the computer gives bishop b5 as one of the main lines, you don't have to worry about it for a while. And also, Cannon started playing really fast, so he's going to try and just keep the position. Okay, so he wants to put his bishop on e2, so there are no sacrifices on g4, and then put his rook on h1. But if I were black, I'd be thinking about knight f8 and knight g6 as well, because that covers e5 really well. So, okay, if your bishop is on e2, you can start to think about knight d6 a little bit more, because there won't be a weak c4 pawn at the end. So there are lots of possible sacrifices. As I said, the knight on b5 is super annoying. It shouldn't really win, but white has lots of tricks to try and get somewhere. So bishop e2, rook h1. Then you start to look at sacrifices. You start to look at a5, whether you can make some progress over there. Probably not. And of course, all the time, doubling on the h file could be an idea. So let's see. So tricky. So this Harvey Zhu may have the upper hand here, but it's still a long, long way to go. So Zheng Qilin is trying very hard to beat George C, and she's willing to create some weaknesses to do it. So after knight d5, she decided she was going to play c4. Okay, George probably should swap. That is roughly equal. Queen back. And now, as soon as knight e7 happens, c4. And Qilin has calculated that knight f5 is not going to win her d pawn, or if it's good, we will always be able to play d5 and break the whole thing open for the bishops. So the knight would have gone to b4, but now, well, he's trying to win with knight to f5. It's not working too well. Now, black cannot double at the moment because of the f7 pawn. So king g8 makes a bit of sense. But yeah, it's not easy. Bishop d7, bishop d2, followed by bishop b4 looks like something interesting, but hardly any good. So yeah, the bishop on a2 supporting d5 could cause some problems. And George C is well up on the clock, the third seed from Sydney, but Zheng Qilin, who runs the chess school in Sydney, formerly a top representative of China, played the World Junior Championships 3 times, but because she didn't win a medal, it was a failure, and she got superseded by various players like Ho Yifan and others that made more steps. At some point, she was a translator at the press conferences at when China was holding big tournaments in Nanjing, for example. And also she was the person who translated Judith Polgar's book, How I Broke Bobby Fischer's Record, and the 2 subsequent volumes into English, into Mandarin. And that was a big project as well. So she's really a jack of all trades, but at the moment, the coaching is, it's the second largest coaching business in Sydney after the Sydney Academy of Chess, which is truly a giant in the field. Okay, Johansson, has he survived? Unlikely, but let's see. How did this happen? Okay, F4 was played. Takes, check, back, take, and A4. So if White could double on that B pawn, I guess it would be pretty good. Takes with the F pawn. Wow. He's worried about H5, H4, but I don't think that's a serious plan. Now the F file is open, and also you have Rook D5 to worry about. Just winning your D6 pawn and protecting the B6 pawn. So C4 played. That stops Rook D5, but Rook doubles. Now the threat is Rook F2. That is a serious threat. Rook E2. So at the moment, Johansson at any point can play Rook F1 and get Queen for 2 rooks. It could be good. I would also think Queen C6 could be good, because when you want to get your Queen for 2 rooks, you want to actually remove the D6 pawn. So Queen C6 looks like a healthy move. Have we got anything else? I don't think pushing pawns on the king side will do much, but Queen C6 looks great. The white queen just can't get into the game as far as I can see. And once you've taken the D6 pawn, then your king can go to C7 quite safely. So presumably after Queen C6, you have to go Queen D2 to stop Rook F1 check. And maybe white is okay there. I don't think you're better. We can go King B7 if we want. I'm even looking at taking on A5 and trying to queen that pawn while the white is too busy worrying about mates on the other side of the board. It could be that G4 is a useful move just to stop white from making a safe haven for the king with G4 and H3. So black playing G4 could be good, but I certainly do want to start with Queen C6, I think. So is black absolutely fine? More than fine. Queen A6. Pawn takes B6. Rook F1. And takes back, and they say that's really good for the queen? Really? And they say Rook F1 is already good. Okay. That is a surprise. And what about Queen C6? Do they actually like it or not? Queen D3, not Queen D2. G4, they think white's equalized. Okay. So you need to grab the queen for 2 rooks, first chance you get apparently. Okay. Just a reminder that our leader is Yi Lui, who's doing okay, but maybe only drawing against Fran Chakrabarti. Here's a point clear of Tedrick Lee. And Tedrick Lee, of course, 14th seed, big surprise packet this tournament. He's up against 11th seed Ryder Testolin, of which a lot was expected, but he never really hit his stride. Of course, if he wins the last 2 games here, he could easily come in second. But Ryder hasn't played anywhere near as many strong players as Tedrick Lee. The same could apply to Su Kaiji, the 4th seed. After an illness in the first round and a quick draw, he never really hit his straps, and yet he's suddenly beaten Trevor Tao, who's been at the top the whole tournament, and he has leapfrogged Tao, and he now has 6.5 points, and he's in 3rd place at the moment with, let's see, only Li Trikien can overtake him. Let's see how that game is going. Bayaka seemed to be going okay. So Bishop C7 played. He wants to go rook check and bishop b6 here and win that d pawn perhaps. Doesn't win it though because king d3 looks okay. And you've just allowed rook to the 7th rank, which doesn't look so clever, but it's opposite bishops. Oh, rook to the 7th rank walks into bishop takes f4 check. That's the trick he's got. And if king takes knight h5 and you take on g7. So that's what he's setting up, and he's probably trying to play knight h5 sometime, but white will have to go knight e2. And then maybe rook check and knight e4 could be a little bit better for black. But overall, I think this is equal, just dead equal, which isn't great for Lee. Yep, really dead equal. So that one's equal. Harvey Zhu has the boring one, which isn't that equal. White has not played rook to the h file yet, and it's going to be. And are all the rooks going to come off? No. If they come off, then knight d6 followed by knight e5 is going to be really strong. So I think black has got some problems here. In fact, you can't even go rook h8 at the moment, probably because of bishop e5. Although then, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Right now, Harvey Zhu's still got 7 minutes left, so it's not serious time trouble. Do they recommend rook h8? They say you have to take on rook h8. What? King g2. Okay, that's possible, but what about rook h4? So rook h8. Oh, they do like rook h1. Yeah, I like it too. Okay, so rook takes, and rook e8. Is there a sacrifice? d6 or e5? They don't think so. King g2. Big deal. Pass. Now they think there's a sacrifice. Let's have a look. Knight takes. Queen takes. Knight takes. Why didn't that work before? Because there was a knight g4 check before. So why is this winning? Take, e5 maybe? And bishop d3 check? Yep. Or queen c2 check, and that is game over. Well, +7 usually is game over. So white has a plan here. And they're constantly saying take on b5. David Cannon really doesn't want to. And that's likely to continue. Zheng Jilin, slightly better against George C, but not so much. Has she sacked something? No, George C is playing for a win in an incredibly risky style. f6, then knight f5, try to attack the d4 pawn. And now, instead of d5, which I thought would be the move, probably, I don't know, answered by e5 then perhaps? I think that's the idea, to put a knight on d4. And rook takes on, hang on, rook takes e6 looks great, doesn't it? No, it's probably not that good because, again, we have c5 and probably the bishop on a2 is rubbish. So queen e4 was played. Bishop d2, super tricky. Queen takes. And if rook e7, she is planning to sacrifice a queen. But rook here. So this is the big problem. Is rook e7 going to trap the queen or not? I don't think so. If rook e7, if rook d7, we've got the c8 square. If rook fe7, we've got queen takes f6. And unless bishop g5 wins the queen then, which it might, wow, that is so tricky. Not easy at all. Is black better? Sure is. Rook f1, rook e2, knight d4, queen f7 check. Great. Rook e2, what about if I go rook e7? Oh, they're doing the same thing. But, yeah. Knight d4 wins. Okay, then the game is over because you've got queen c1 checkmate at the end. So it is really a great little George C trick. So knight f5, what should she have played? d5. e5, that's better for white, is it? Because you have rook d7 at the end. Okay. So it's just tactics. Knight d4. Oh, but we can take that and take on b7, can't we? Yeah, that's completely winning. So you can't play knight d4. So yeah, you're in all sorts of bother. So d5 was pretty strong. But unfortunately, she went queen e4 and queen e6, and her queen is now in all sorts of bother. Unfortunately, yeah, and she's burning time. I think George C is going to bounce back and win. Okay, on board one, I have to say Chakrabarti is pretty close to a draw here. But again, white has that threat of those connected pawns. If you play f5, it's very simple just to go e5. And then e4, and the pawns are really, really good. So how does white cope with that? If you go rook c1, we probably just go bishop d7, and nothing has changed. So I think he missed rook a4. How did this happen? Rook check, king back, king e7 is fine. So he grabbed a pawn. But unfortunately, that pawn is in all sorts of bother now. So I think we should play rook f1 here. And that probably is enough to draw. Oh, rook d3. Ah, okay, not rook f1. So I think rook f7 is probably where he goes wrong. Yeah, a4 though? Surely not. Okay, this is not so easy at all. Should he not give a check? Yeah, a4 perhaps. I'm not worried about the h-pawn. Yeah, I think I like a4 much more. The way the game went after, with rook a4, it's very, very tricky. So they're saying this is not that bad. Seriously? No, it's that bad. This is close to loss now for Chakrabarti. I don't know if you saw rook a4 or not. So they're suggesting bishop b5, and pushing the a pawn as fast as you can. But I just don't think that's going to be enough with the center pawns coming around the board, down the board. But it's worth a try anyway. But really tough for Chakrabarti. Yi Liu might win his 9th game out of 10. Unbelievable. Okay, we have had some moves, and he did play the tricky bishop a6. Queen c3 played. Well, now your knight's pinned. Rook a b8. I reckon he might be thinking about rook b3 here. Rook f5 played. Go away, rook. Whoa, what's going on here? Bishop g4 is the idea. Why can't you go h3? Because we can take on e4 and threaten knight g3 check all the time. So queen takes played. Now there's a big choice. b2's hanging, e4's hanging. e4 looks risky because we walk into a pin. You could just reply knight c6 and we might be losing. So bishop here played. And this is about the best position Testellan's had in ages. I mean, it's not great, but so is knight c6 a real threat? Certainly, if we don't have any threats on the king side, it's a real threat. So knight f4 is the main one, but I would love to somehow take on d5 and set up things, but I can't. So is white still better? Yep, they think there are no tactics here. Go back, bishop d4 to take the e-pawn. Already rook b2 might have been good. So white is already going okay here, but not hugely okay. Yeah, so white never let it slip. Queen g5 was played. Knight c6, it's getting scary. They're actually saying that knight is worth so much you should leave your rook there. But, okay, rook c8. Queen a6 looks pretty good. Oh, 97. That was what the queen a6 was meant to threaten. Yep, so 97 is good immediately. And that should be game over. I mean, you're only winning the exchange back, but you've got all the extra pawns. So 97, yep, +3, and I think Teslan will resign. And Tedrick Lee will actually tie for first for a brief moment. It's got worse. Okay, he absolutely has to take on c8 now. So we'll take here. And is this good or, let's see. Okay, I sort of want to force you that way and take. So the real question is, after rook d8 check, are we just hiding on e4? Because if we get a spare moment, rook b3 is going to kill white, followed by the 2 rooks checkmate. So rook d3 played. If you go to c2, you're a little bit safer. We'll still take on a3, but it might be harder to set up a checkmate. So -2, they say, yep, take on a3, and then, yeah, they're saying once you take on a3, you put the other rook on h3, and you threaten rook h2 or rook a2, and white will have to pull back to defend and probably will lose the f4 pawn while you're doing it. I mean, even this pawn structure with the black king on the back rank could be winning for black. It's possible to play. Oh, okay, not sure why he did that, but anyway, can't hurt to get closer to the time control. So Yi is close to winning. Tedrick Lee, has 97 been played? It has. He's got 50 seconds left. I think it's safe to put your queen on h3 around here, unless you've got something really, really good. Queen c6 is not bad, but queen h3 means he'll never mate you. Queen f5 means he'll never mate you either. So yeah, let's offer a swap of queens and see how he likes that. So completely winning for Tedrick Lee. Another great scalp for him. Sterling Barker, we left him looking equal. It's still looking equal. I'd say it's zeros now. Yep, well, that's as close as you can get to zeros. Harvey Zhu has not put a rook on the h file, but his opponent decided finally to take on b5. And he took back with this guy. So he has no pawn breaks at all. Rook b7. Why didn't he go rook a8? Because there's a sack on e5. Okay, so how do we get through? So he's protected e5 as much as he can. He's tried to control the entry squares. So we can double and play rook a7. It's unclear that we're getting anywhere, though. And what else can we do here? Not much. So taking back with that a pawn, I think was dodgy, but maybe he was worried about knight takes d5, which could have been a serious sacrifice if you took the other way. So he takes here and rook b7, and this is looking like white is no longer doing anything. The computer may well say it's better for white, but yeah, but not much. So David Cannon, by exchanging on b5 at the right time. So let's just see, after bishop b5, they want you to take with the c pawn. It's got to be the c pawn to keep some mobility in the pawn structure. So this is just dead equal, and e5 is covered well enough, so really nothing happening. George C has tricked his opponent, and okay, he's won the exchange. He can play rook takes d4 here if he wants, because rook takes rook, queen c1 check. It is game over. Leo Kalina has 9 seconds left against Daryl Johansson. That is usually not a good sign. Having no time at all is a worse sign. Okay, but in fact, he ran himself down to 2 seconds. There was a lag. Okay, rook a2. So his idea is if we double on that pawn on d6 with other rook to d6, he's going to double on the a file. So is e4 a good move here? Wow. e4, queen d5. I wondered if that would get your king caught in a net. And it really does. And apparently white has enough counterplay here. So where did Johansson go wrong? Queen, rook e2, they're saying rook f1 check. He didn't take that opportunity because he wanted to win the pawn on d6. And now that is, well, they say you actually don't have a good move if you don't try to take the pawn as fast as possible. So what about pawn up here? What about queen b1 or something? No, they're saying queen d5, which I like. Take, take. Now the threat is rook a8 check. We have to go here to give our king a chance of running away. c4, rook here. Check. Oh, no, they say rook f1. What a move. Rook check is no good. b5. No perpetual. That's really, yeah, it is perpetual. So why is this? You've got to go king c7, big deal. And then you're going to move your rook and run away. Amazing. Okay, so there is no perpetual in here. They are saying rook f1 will lead to one, though. Because you will force the king to go to b7, and then you will double on the a file. Or even the back rank. So king d8, absolutely. Rook check. King here. Rook here. Rook f6 looks forced. No, rook g6, apparently. Rook d5 is fun, apparently, but not winning. Rook g6, why is this a draw? Oh, they say, give a check, go to attack the b pawn, and you have to go back again, and it's a draw. Well, that is a long variation, and a lot of it seems to be good for Johansson. So Johansson played e4. So he is happy to win a pawn and then see if his opponent can find all the required moves. Kalina is, of course, very, very, very short of time, and they still have 10 moves to go before the time control. So that is really tough. You know, there was a whole series of perfect moves White needed to play to make those zeros, and the chances of him getting that way, well, he didn't even go queen d5. So can you play rook d6, or are you losing a rook at the end? You're probably losing a rook at the end. So what should we play here? Good question. King b7 looks super risky. I don't know. I think it's got to be king b7, but king d8 is still a draw. King b8 is still a draw. Let's see why. King here. Rook takes. Oh, sorry. White has to double. Rook takes. So let's see you try to play rook a8 check. They say it's winning for black because of that passed pawn and rook d3. Okay, so why would white play this way? h4 is okay. Well, that's super weird. Why can't we go rook d3 now? We can. Takes g... What? That is unbelievable. Rook d3, the computer wants to go pawn takes pawn here. No, it doesn't. Fortunately. Okay, so what moves was it playing pawn takes pawn against? Oh, rook g6. Okay. Rook d3, queen back. Why? I mean, what threats do white have apart from the fact blacks have tied up a bit? Yeah. I mean, zeros don't look very sensible here at all. Kalina played another move with 2 seconds to go. Yeah, that was Queen E3. Gee, it's okay. We'll come back and he's lost on time, I reckon. Back to the top game. Chakrabarti has held it to 1 pawn. King D2. Now Rook A3 looks fantastic. Because Rook D8 doesn't do anything. Rook A3, Rook F2 check. You're in big trouble here. So, yeah, and if white has to swap off a pair of rooks, that's probably all over. So, hang on, what about Rook A3 now? What if he tries this move to set up a mating attack? Oh, I like it. How about we give a check here first? Wow, it's close. Yep. So he hasn't played Rook A3, but he's got a lot more time than his opponent. He should be winning on board 1. And Tedrick Lee, has he had a resignation yet from his opponent? Because that looked like it was going to be coming pretty soon. Pair of bishops, 2 extra pawns. No entry squares on the C file. No knight F4 checks. And, yeah, white's just pushing pawns. I think this is another really impressive win from Tedrick Lee. He hardly let it get out of control in a super complicated position. If we go back around here, black was seriously attacking. Even earlier, black was seriously attacking with ideas of knight G3 check and so on. It looked like it was going to be really tough to play, but he held on. Now C3 is a threat. Around here, maybe he could have played a little better. Yeah, I think taking on E4 at some point was better, but his opponent simply gave up the exchange to get a knight to C6, and the attack was not getting anywhere, and his opponent blundered, and then it really was game over. He didn't even play Queen F5, ruining his pawn structure. He wants 2 pawns, not 1, and sure enough, it was just easy for white. So Testolin loses, I think. Bayaka, well, they've both got 3 minutes left. It's going to be a draw, isn't it? Any tricks? Maybe the bishop moves to C8 or something to try to play knight F5 check. Yep. That looks a decent chance. You can't take on D4 because of knight F5. Knight F5's mate. Okay, that's better than we thought. Whoa, that is careless. I mean, knight G7 stops the mate, but yeah, suddenly knight G7 stops the mate and black is fine. Hard to believe. Okay, bishop. This looks like a great move for someone in time against someone in time trouble. Yeah, it's so easy to panic, and you don't want your knight on G7. It's going nowhere from there. Maybe E6 sometime, but that allows knight F5 mate. So, yeah, knight G7 just doesn't look right, but you've got to play it. And if he uses up all his time working out how to play it, then, yeah, Bayaka is really going to lose. And, of course, Tri Kien is the player who played knight G7. Tri Kien is the player who can get to 7 points here and be outright third, I think, if he manages to win this one. So bishop b7 played. So bishop takes d4 looks rather good. What else can we do? They say black, well, minus 0.1, I wouldn't worry about it. Opposite bishops. Someone symbolically better. It's nice that it's black, but really it's nothing special. I mean, I don't even see why you want to play rook b8, because after bishop takes pawn, we can go b3 any day of the week. I would have thought we want to take this pawn and go rook e8 to go with rook e3 check. Rook c6, forcing us back and taking the h-pawn. So rook b8 is trying to make rook c6 into a bad move. That is clever. Rook c6, king d7, rook h6, yeah. But bishop b, even that, bishop b2. I know my king's not perfect, but it's such a drawish tendency. But he still hasn't moved. So rook h8 is the other move? Oh, come on, that's not going to happen. No. Rook b8 played. So, yeah, he'll move his bishop out. I don't think you can go to c6 because of rook c8 and you're in a pin. So you go to a6. And then, or c8 is possible if you want to make a draw, I guess. To play knight f5, he still wants to make a draw. Harvey Zhu, I love that file. I don't know what you're going to do with it. That's very much equal. George C is closing in on victory. Is the exchange up for nothing against Zhang Jilin, and she has some slightly weak pawns. So that will be game over. And Johansson has run away a bit. So I think he's just a clear pawn up now. But the threat is queen a2, I think. So that's why you don't want to go king b7 or something like that, because of queen a2. So what about, oh no, queen d3 is not quite stopping everything. But our king can definitely run away. I'd like to have one more pawn before they start chasing my king. So, yeah, let's see. Queen e6, they say. All right, so queen h2. Queen a2, sorry. e3. They reckon it's not mate. And they value that e-pawn a lot, and think the black king will be safe on the other side, in which case the e-pawn's a winner. So, no move made yet by Johansson. He's got 3 minutes left. It is a little bit risky to get into time trouble when your king's not safe, but if he works out that he should run away with his king, then he'll probably be fine. Heather Richards was in all sorts of bother against Ethan Chang. Is she still? Not really. Actually, it's looking a bit drawish. You have to go for the B pawn. We'll go for the C pawn and the A pawn and get our rook behind that pawn. So what I'm thinking is, so rook here. Oh, not rook there. Or did he play that? No, surely not. Yeah, he played rook e5. Okay, then he really is just going for a draw. So rook takes. I presume rook d4 would be a losing pawn ending, but I'm not absolutely sure about it. But okay, I can just go king here, and yeah, it's got to be a draw. Maybe rook check. Could have gone to the second rank if I wanted to. So yeah, this looks zeros. Yep. So Heather Richards has fought back well enough to make a draw. And one more game. Terence Tang. Is he trying to win? I guess he is. But after king d3, I don't think it's close to winning. So this will probably just be a draw. Okay, back to our top games. Oh, Tedrick Lee has won. So he goes to 8 points, which is pretty incredible. 8.5 is often a winning score in this sort of tournament. Unfortunately, his main rival, Yi Liu, has 8 plus a game in hand. So king g1 played. White has already pulled back to try to make that work. So how does black go about winning this? Do not play e5, as pawn takes pawn check could cause a problem. If we double on the 7th, we need a pawn to back it up. We haven't got that. Rook af2. stopping rook f1. That's clever. And we have no mating nets to set up. Yep. Yes. And okay, let's try. Rook here. Rook a1. Takes. Check. King here. Actually, I think I want to go king here. Because that rook and pawn ending is trivial. And then I can run to d4. I mean, king e5 is fine, but you'll go rook e7. Maybe rook f6 is still absolutely fine. Oh, but hang on. A drawn pawn ending. Give it check first. Very, very clever. And now the pawn ending's winning because the white king's too far away. Hang on. Yeah. Absolutely winning. It's close. But okay, he's got enough time. They're at move 40. He's going to get a half hour. He can calculate it all. Sterling Baker, we've been expecting a draw for a while. But Tri Kien is determined to keep playing for a win. But he's playing for a loss now. Harvey Zhu is also playing for a loss because at some moment when he's not looking, the black queen will go to h7 and h4 and g3 check. So he needs to keep a rook ready to go to h1. So he has nothing to do here, but yeah. So this should be a draw if they play sensibly, which I cannot guarantee. Okay, George C is very, very close to winning. I think he is already threatening knight g3, winning because of the rook g2 check. So this should be game over. Johansson against Kalina. He's running with the king. But hang on, he's not running with the king because rook d1. What has he done? Allowed a draw? Or is he planning to give up his queen? Oh no, he doesn't have time for e2. He does have time for queen d2. Yep, queen c2. And by the way, this would not be a draw because white would simply maneuver the king in front of the pawn and then the queen would go on a hunt to take stuff. Now, black would try to set up a blockade with rook e6, but white would create a passed pawn on the king side and the white king would just sit on e1 or e2 and black would be unable to do anything. So, yeah, that would be losing. So he went to c7. Is he going to run away to e7? That's hardly... No, queen's... Is he going to run to d8? No, it doesn't help him at all because he loses c5 with check. Johansson has blown it. After queen a2, is he even winning anymore? Rook b8, not the move he wants to play. King d6 is possible and just lose your b6 pawn. That is probably what he has to do. After e3, it's zeros. And Johansson has blown it against the Melbourne junior Leo Kalina, and his poor tournament against juniors continues, and he's still on 50%. So he will not play Yi Liu in the last round, which was the main hope we had for lots of excitement. Back up to the top game, still no move by white, but of course he's past move 40. So rook a f2 is winning because of a trick, although we did see we could have just played king c5 instead of king e5 and made it easy without any calculation. So that is winning for black. Sterling Baker was drawing, still drawing. He has already got an international master norm in the bag. Also, Tedrick Lee has an international master norm in the bag, but he doesn't need it because he became an international master 2 weeks ago at the Oceania Zonal by winning the under-18 division. So yeah, I mean, that should have been an indicator that Tedrick Lee was in good form. And yeah, he's certainly done okay. So when we started, yeah. So apart from the Oceania, okay, there were a few indicators. I mean, he didn't win tournaments much this year, but he came third in the Canterbury Summer Swiss, which was at the start of December. He came second in the Victorian Junior, which is pretty remarkable since he managed to win the Oceania one. He came equal first in the Melbourne Chess Club Spring Classic and second in the Victorian Open. So that's not terrible. But of course, 2024, he was just winning the under-14 championship in Victoria. So nothing that would indicate a result like this. So King E6 played. Oh, check, are they taking a draw? Or is Lee going to take on F6 and keep pushing away? Then there was F5. No, he's taking the draw. So Sterling Backer has had a run of draws against top players, but that's still putting Lee in clear third place by drawing that game. He goes to 6.5 points. So yeah, just a rundown of what we've had so far. Thank you very much. Yep, that is triple repetition. He could have claimed it, but certainly, by the way, Black can claim a draw now without writing a move down, just saying this is the third time this position has occurred with my king on E6, and this is already triple repetition. I'm not going to make a move to create repetition. It already is 3 times. So usually you have to write your move down, call over the arbiter, say this is triple repetition, but in this position, it's not necessary. I think they'll look at each other and just shake hands anyway. That's the normal way triple repetition is done. No, he plays King E7. He desperately wants his opponent to play on, I guess. Yi hasn't moved yet, but yeah, he just has to calculate that Rook AF2 is winning, and he didn't. D4 played. Yeah, your biggest risk in these positions is if your pawns become detached. But here, I guess he's trying to play King D5, but what about Rook D1 now, for example? Is he really going to go D3? I guess he is. Okay, so king up, check, king here, rook here. I don't like this at all. I don't think I can create a mating attack. Yeah. So they say rook check and E5. What? And in order to play King F3. That is clever. And now, oh no, rook H3. Big deal. They're not doing anything. This is rook H3, rook F3. They haven't gained anything. Rook A5. Okay, that is unexpected. Apparently this is winning, but it is not what you want. Yeah, this is getting into the realm of which page of Dvoretsky are we on, and is it a winning page or a drawing page? So, okay, so D4, really unnecessary and putting the win at risk. Okay. So Harvey Zhu has decided that he's not achieving anything on the E file, so he's decided to go to the H file, but black is already blocking it with knight H4 check, and there are no tricks there, so I don't know why they don't stop the game. Maybe the arbiter can. After 50 moves without a piece being, no, 75 moves without a piece being taken or a pawn moved, knight G3 played. Surely Zhang Jilin will resign this one. So Johansson only drew. He missed the win. That was an early draw. Heather Richards is trying to baffle her opponent, I guess. So rook E2 will happen. Sorry, rook E4. It wants to take the A4 pawn and then go rook A2 and A4. But okay, we're taking B3 before that happens. So what about king G3 here? And black probably has a perpetual or close to it. But Heather Richards is definitely better here. It's a question of whether you can actually make progress. They say king C7. Bit baffling. Rook A4, rook B3, rook C4. Okay, it's equal material. White can't queen a pawn on that side. So Terence Tang is, yeah. Terence Tang. So white had a perfect blockade and he goes and lifts it. So I can only think that John Papantonio is trying to win this. But that is a bit crazy. How do you win with a pawn on C3? It was back on C5 before. Very, very weird. So Ted Power against John Rusakov. Ted Power was doing quite well. That's a lot of pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that means black could have used one to take something. Or white could have taken a pawn. Okay, so no, that simply reminds me of a very famous, I'll go new position. It reminds me of this quite famous puzzle where the biggest question is this a legal position or not? And it turns out that you've played exactly the right number of captures so that as long as your pawns took all their pieces, it is legal. And then, this is one problem that computers have completely ruined, by the way, because the beautiful solution that was intended, I think, by Shinkman, the composer, was this. Which is great. You drag the other king towards you. Now, unfortunately, if I put a computer on it, it finds two ways to mate in 8. King D2 is also mating in 8, which is so sad because that's sort of the most obvious move on the board, and it ruins the beauty of the whole puzzle. So, yeah, that was one of the things we can blame computers for is ruining some wonderful old puzzles. Of course, they've refuted other ones. And so, Daryl, you were that close to winning, yeah? Near the end. Yeah, you just had to run your king away in a safe way. So queen E6 or something, and then run it to D6 and E7. Yeah. So, okay, Daryl Johansson allowed a draw right near the end after lots and lots and lots of hard work just to get a good position, but one mistake made it not work. Okay, let's go back to our leader. He was winning. Now he's put it in jeopardy. And Chakrabarti moved very quickly to play rook here. What about, hang on, that's not very good at all though, is it? Because we finally get our king up. So let's see, king d5. What trick has he got? You give a check and you go rook c4 perhaps, or you attack the e-pawn, I don't mind. Let's say we attack the e-pawn. But now you're going to run out of checks. Or maybe we check here first. King here. Rook here. And if rook takes pawn check, king here is game over. Because although you can stop one of the mates, you can't stop both of them. So unfortunately, Chakrabarti has not found the best defense, and he is going to lose. Admittedly, he was losing a few moves ago anyway, but this is all a bit unfortunate. So yeah, for those who've just walked in, this was winning with the point that after, what did we do? Rook here, take, check, king here, rook e7. We do not play rook f6, which is a draw after rook e6, but we go check, and then rook f6, which is not a draw after rook e6. Oh, even easier, yeah. But okay, this is not a drawn pawn ending either. So that's absolutely fine for black. So what's that? Why the previous one drew? Oh, well, this is not a draw because after takes, king up, we go here, and we've got the opposition. And now whichever way you go, we go the other way and queen the pawn pretty easily. Okay, so rook c7. The thing is, he wanted to go king d5 anyway. You've just encouraged that. So, yep, king d5 played. And, yeah, Yi will be very happy. So what is going on here? They have been playing this for so long. And I just want to say so long to the game. That is so weird. They can't... They're not going to hold up the closing ceremony because it's only the second last round. There's no point going on here. So, I don't know. So, Zhang Qilin should have resigned by now. Has she? Yes, she has. You can see the... Oh, no. Well, I think she has. She hasn't moved for forever. It's just one of these ones where the clocks weren't stopped. That's completely illegal to drop into the commentary room when your game's still going. Yeah, so she has to resign. You should report her to Peter Tsai, and then she has to resign. So yeah, all the machine's wrong. Okay, so Peter Tsai being our arbiter. So Min Ren has won. Okay, so finally he gets a little bit of luck. He played quite well. We saw it earlier when there were two pieces for for one rook and two pawns, and black just had to, bishop a6 was really good because c3 wasn't possible because of d3, and now black can start pushing pawns, and that's exactly what Min Ren did, and eventually these guys are going to get through. There could be a knight c2 at any moment. d3, okay, that'll do the job. And now take two pieces up, and he won the game. So Daniel Wang, unfortunately, second half of the event, been pretty bad. Jack Rogers, we thought he was winning a rook ending. Exchange up ending. And yeah, his opponent fought hard, but it was always losing. Jean Rusakov, oh yeah, well, I think has he resigned here? No, not quite, but unless Ted Power gets in trouble, then one 15-year-old beat the other 15-year-old. Let's quickly go back to this one, king d5 played. What if he tries to win the other pawn? Okay, check again. If king f1, I'm going to win with king f3. What? Rook where? Oh, rook d3, you mean? Oh, yeah, that forces that back, you mean? Yeah, and then you could play king takes pawn if you want to, but I'm happy just... I don't know what I'm happy with. No, I'd rather not drag the rook back and bring my king in for a mating attack. Rook g3, king somewhere, king f3 resigns, yeah? Yeah, rook c7. Look, they're hard positions to defend. You're constantly wondering whether you should go passive or look for counterplay. But and there's always the risk that you lose that f4 pawn. But yeah, you had to basically keep your rook on the back rank to stop the mates and use your other rook to try to swap the e pawn for the f pawn. Even then, you might not draw, but you'd have some chances. And it's possible that Chakrabarti will resign here or very soon. David Cannon, oh, maybe this one's been a green drawn. No, except they keep moving. Yeah. Okay, it is not a position to have the two bishops in. It is not a position to have black to have a black square bishop in. Yeah, so black is the only one that can maneuver their rook to a dark square and then play checkers, whereas white has to get rid of that f2 bishop. So no, it's why are they moving? This is when they come down, I'm going to have to ask them who was playing for a win here, because it's genuinely weird. So actually, things are just about over. We might stay with the Chakrabarti game just to see Yi Liu's technique, but it's an unbelievable run by the 28-year-old from Queensland. Yeah, he showed his talent in 2017 when he won the Australian Open, but since then he hadn't even been able to get an IM title. Now his rating is zooming up towards 2,400. I mean, this performance is pretty amazing. And not only that, yeah, it's not just an IM norm. It's going to be one of those IM norms where you go a point or two over, which is always very useful when you're applying. I think it's his second norm. But yeah, his good form, as I mentioned before, was almost an accident. It came from being a very good gamer, deciding to play an international tournament in Germany, where he was, I think he was an invited player. I'm not sure what the game was, unfortunately, but I'm sure Google would turn up what sort of gamer he is. He's a top class at one particular game. Anyway, he went looking for a tournament to play after the real tournament. He played the Münsterland Open. He won it comfortably. Well, not comfortably, but he was, yeah, he was never in doubt. He could take a short draw in the last round and make a tie for first. Unfortunately, he had a forfeit in his score, so there was no IM norm because he only actually played 8 games, and that's not enough. But by then he was on a roll, came back, won 5 in a row at the Christmas special, had an accident against Brady McClymont. But yeah, his last 25 games has included about 18 wins, 19 wins, and yeah, one loss and a lot of draws. Well, not many, half a dozen draws. So it really has been phenomenal. So rook c6 was played. So he does want to get that pawn, but rook g3 and king f3 is mate. So I think I'd play that. No stalemates, no tricks at all. One of the things about rook g3 and king f3 is there's not just back rank mate, but you've got rook f2 and rook g1 as well. So that is really gone.
a sideboard version of that. If you place king h1 up, you play king f3 anyway, then you threatening check.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, Chakrabarty's gone and put his rook on stupid squares because when the king gets to f3, you have no checks at all. So and he's been heading his king's been heading in to help with the mating attack. Very often, two rooks can't mate. Double on the 7, you need a helper. He decided to use his king. There was one dodgy moment, perhaps, but once White's rook left the back rank, all the mates start turning up, and he's just not winning enough pawns. So I'm amazed that Yi doesn't play this because it looks like it's absolutely forced mate in, let's say, 8, 7. Okay. Yeah. One of the very first computer cheats, by the way, was caught in a tournament in Germany. He was using hearing equipment and a friend with who was conveying moves to him. Anyway, he was a relatively low-rated player, maybe 2,200 in an international in Germany, and he was about 55 years old, so not likely to be a young improving junior. And he managed to get to 7 out of 9 in this tournament with a number of grandmasters. He beat one in the last round. And after he won the last game and his opponent resigned, he shrugged and said, "Oh, yes, it's mate in 7." And it wasn't an all checks position. And he had also won another game with a really fantastic computer move, but at least a human could conceivably have seen it. But the last game where he announced mate in 7, or his opponent said, "There's something odd here. I can't work out why it's mate in 7," and they refused to pay him his prize money. He was going to sue, but I think one of the German reporters went round to his hometown, which was a relatively small town, and discovered that just before the tournament, he'd bought about 3,000 Deutschmarks of spy equipment. And so he decided that the court case probably wasn't a winner, and he kept a low profile after that. But yeah, that was very early. Before that, you had Van Neumann in the World Open, who froze at one point when, well, again, he had a connection, but this time they used a player who barely could play chess. Maybe he couldn't play at all. Just to test out whether they could tell him the moves. They'd taught him algebraic notation. But yes, there was one moment where, in a winner with French, where black played bishop takes c3 check, white had a bishop on d2, and he couldn't work out whether it was b takes c3 or bishop takes c3. And he spent 40 minutes thinking about that move. And at the end of the tournament, the organizer, Bill Gorchberg, said, "Congratulations, well done. You've won some, $2,000, $5,000 rating prize. But I'd just like to play one game against you before you get the prize." And the guy said, "No, absolutely not," and disappeared. And subsequently turned up a few years later at the World Sudoku Championships. And they didn't catch him until he was in the final, which is a big public final with a big board like this where you fill in the numbers so that everyone can see. And he didn't fill in a single number during the final. Did he? I thought he didn't fill in any. You reckon 2? Were they right? Oh, that's impressive. Okay. He was a better Sudoku player than I thought. Anyway, but previously he just had a sort of MAGA-style cap with a camera in it, and his friend had been telling him where to fill in. That was his name then? Okay. Anyway, it was the same guy that had done the scam at the World Open in chess as well. So after that, Sudoku decided to take some chess-style precautions against cheating. Just a reminder, actually, that in the last 2 days, we have had 2 people in the reserves caught with mobile phones in random checks. So the arbiters just say, "Okay, it's an hour into the game, let's check everyone going in and out of the loo." And they scanned them, and they've caught 1 on each of the last 2 days. I don't know about today. Did we get a trifecta? Or we don't know. But There were no chess programs on the mobiles, but of course you lose automatically nowadays. It just shows how careless people are, I guess. Or maybe they just don't trust the organizer to hand the phone in. I mean, it's conceivable if you've got the new iPhone 19, then you really don't want to give it up to the arbiter. They probably don't even know the prototype's around, and so they keep it in their pocket. Okay, and Yi has played the mating attack. He has won. So these are the standings going into the final round of the Australian Championship. And Yi Liu has not yet won the tournament despite scoring 9 out of 10. The last time someone scored 9 out of 10, it was Zhao Song Wan, and next to him was George C with 9 out of 10 as well. So it's not so unusual when someone goes on a tear that someone tries to keep up. When Gary Lane won with 9 out of 11, I was constantly half a point behind him. So Tedrick Lee is chasing brilliantly, but he now needs Yi to lose in the last round, and it's hard to know who Yi's got to play yet. He has played a serious field. Really? Sukai G, yep, okay. So Sukai G is, he won today, didn't he? So he goes to 6.5. So Yi will have white against Sukai G, and I predict that game will have finished before I start the commentary. Because I'm happy for Kai to hear this. He's a gutless wonder, and he's going to give a draw with the black pieces to Yi, and Yi will win the Australian Championship. And if he takes that as a challenge, then I'll actually have a game to comment on. Tedrick Lee is 1 point behind. He needs to win. There's still a few people he hasn't played, so it could still be a tough pairing. I don't think he's played George C yet. So that is probably what's going to happen there. So that's 8 points. And then we have to go all the way down to 6.5 for third place, 1.5 points behind. And that is Kien, Li Tri Kien. On 6, we have quite a few. Trevor, 6.5. OG has got there as well. So there are 2 people in third place. Then we go 6 points. Trevor Tao, Sterling Baaka, and David Cannon. Anyone else? George C as well. So they may influence the final standings a little bit, but incredibly, Tedrick Lee is at least clear second, and could be in a playoff if everything goes right for him. But I predict normally in these situations when a player is a point clear, they don't take any risks at all in the last round. So we may have a bit of a fizzer on board 1, after which we may have a bit of a fizzer on board 2, because Tedrick can't catch him anymore.
If it's tied, is it tied with the playoffs?
Playoffs, yes.
Why is there like tie breaks?
Why no tie breaks? Because they want you to play off in classical chess. So normally there is a playoff match about 6 months later when they've got a good sponsor with usually about $3,000 prize money and that sort of thing. So it's worth getting into a playoff. Yeah, but So I think they haven't changed that rule yet. They've talked about changing the rule to have a rapid playoff. They might not bother finding a good sponsor nowadays. Okay, so Chakrabarti has not resigned, but that game is over. Anyway, the last round is at 9:30, so the commentary will start at 10 o'clock, and hopefully we've still got some interesting games to have a look at. But certainly down the field, there's a few people with something to play for. But another great win by Yi Liu. It really is phenomenal the way he's played, and he will at least be equal first after the last round. So see you all tomorrow. Don't oversleep, and we'll have a champion tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Cheers. Oh, good.
These last couple of days.
Oh, good. Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Will you be here tomorrow?
I went to get
Right, okay.
I've made plans to go, unfortunately.
Okay. No worries. Okay.
Others are formed, but like, like there's real threats, but it just depends precisely. So thanks so much for doing.
Cheers.
You need a new place.
Yes, a really nice one.
That's,
Okay, that's good.
so I told that, you got that fiber. What's he?
Oh, I missed it.